Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army. Army officers say the missile, found sometime last week, has been inspected at Roswell, New Mexico, and sent to Wright Field, Ohio, for further inspection.
Very serious.
Non-human intelligence exists. UAPs are real. They're here, and they're not human.
Do we have the bodies of the pilots?
Biologics came to some of these recoveries. Yeah.
Do you believe that our government is in possession of UAPs?
Absolutely, based on interviewing over 40 witnesses over 4 years.
What else you want to know?
$7 was...
Go on, Lee.
How you doing? You all right?
Yeah, fire away. We're recording. Let me just double
We're
check
all
we're
good.
recording.
Right, lovely. All right, welcome to another episode of Across the Pond. It's another collaboration episode. My good friend Matty from UFOs Around the World is joining me for this episode again. And also we're going to collaborate with our two guests as well, who I will waste no time in introducing. We've got Simon Holland, who's been on before, a filmmaker previously with the BBC, who's now got a huge YouTube following and growing by the day, who's covering a lot of different subjects from UFOs to some of the stuff that we're going to be talking about this evening. Yep. And then also we've brought in John Wedger, who is a former Metropolitan Police detective, who has blown the whistle on many of things, again, tying into what we're going to be talking about tonight. Now, from Matty's point of view, we came into this from a UFO perspective. That's where we looked. It's what brought us in. And like many people within this subject, we've come to many different crossroads, and we've found that it connects with various other subjects, and there's a lot of things interlinked, and there's layers of complexity to this subject, and it ties it in essentially to what we're going to be talking about this evening. So rather than me gobbling off, I'm just going to let Simon firstly introduce his background from the BBC standpoint, and then we'll go to John and we'll let him introduce his background from the Met point of view. Because what we're going to be talking about tonight, and I'll give you a warning now, it's going to be dark, it's going to be sinister, we're going to be touching on topics that are uncomfortable to talk about. So if you are of a sensitive disposition, maybe this isn't the episode for you. But otherwise, Simon, please just give us a fire away. Tell us a little bit about yourself and where you're coming from on this perspective as being a filmmaker with the BBC.
Yeah, well, it is a dark subject, and I think I was at BBC in West London at a studio called Lime Grove. And it's the thing about the BBC that I didn't really realize is that everybody you meet who has a kind of a well-known surname, like a household product or something, is the son or daughter of that actual family. The producers and the executive producers were very, very posh and very connected, connected to British government, connected to royalty, connected to old money families in Britain. And, some of them were really nice. Some of them were completely not, but it varied. And while I was there was a lot of talk behind the scenes about a kind of society changes in Britain. And I think these younger people who are the sons and daughters of very established families were keen to explain that there was a kind of a parallel kind of belief system in Britain. They were hinting to me of a non kind of established Christian belief, and they started talking about alien DNA, and they're talking about a hive mentality and queen bees, and it's just like, what planet are you guys from? I mean, I went to a comprehensive school, went to a state university, and was very much an oik at the BBC as a film editor. But I was working with these people, and they definitely talked a lot in a very posh and erudite way about, and they used terms like they would call immigrants, specifically black people, words like pickaninnies. It's like, what? I mean, what's going on here? I mean, and it was from their education and their family background. And I definitely got a them and us feeling from them. But then I can't tell you what happened, but I was on a filming trip and went to a very connected person in the kind of royal family connection. And while staying at their house, and I have to be I'm not going to say where it was, who they are, they sat me down and basically told me of this belief system that they had, that Britain was very much ruled by an elite class, and that everybody else was just complete workers. They felt like Britain needed cleansing, and that they didn't have a passport, they didn't use money, they could travel internationally, and they had no kind of respect for the common person. And I was just like, oh, really? This is, I'm a kind of utopian Labour supporting socialist. And it came across as very shocking to me. I didn't really realize it existed. But then, a slight UFO connection, I was a big science fiction fan, and I saw Nigel Neal's film Quatermass in the Pit. And the subtext of Quatermass in the Pit is that an alien comes to Earth millions of years ago, reproduces with humans, makes queen bees, and the rest of us are in the hive. And these queen bees occasionally need to cleanse the hive and purge immigrants, purge the workers, stop homosexuality, and be a kind of very kind of fascist regime. And that's all in that film. And I thought, hang on a minute, I've met the people who do that. Now, I'm interested to hear John's take on that, because did I just bump into a bunch of nutters, or does this kind of undercurrent of a bunch of people in Britain who are very hidden, very secret, and very powerful and very old money actually, one, do they believe it? But two, does it wield any power in Britain or internationally? I don't know, John, if you, anything that I've said, does that resonate on what you've actually seen in ground truth?
Well, bits and pieces. I mean, I've got no real input in respect to aliens and things like that. But where it will only sort of shoe on in is the fact that I investigated child abuse and the cover-ups of child abuse. Right. In my career as a child protection investigator, whilst in the police, I came across ritual abuse, but this was mainly from the Jamaican community. They were very much into a practice called obia, right, which is a derivative of voodooism. The Congolese, there was a big Congolese population in Tottenham and Hackney, and they were into a thing called Kindoko, and the Nigerians had juju and voodoo. And so, because I only ever worked sort of like the inner city ghetto areas, that's the majority of the cases that I dealt with that inferred on that practice. It was only when I left the police and I started interviewing survivors of abuse, 1 in 10 would come out with a thing called Satanic ritual abuse, right? SRA. It's a devil worship. It's all pretty much the same. But when you're saying about your background in the BBC, one venue that got mentioned twice to me as a place where not only did devil worship go on, but child sacrifice went on, was in some outbuildings at Pinewood Studios. That was mentioned to me twice. And the worst account I ever got where 5 children were stabbed to death was at that venue in Pinewood. That's where it was mentioned. So it's across the board. So I wouldn't say it was any specific to any demographic in society or anything else. Right. But the practices were the same. It was the targeting of children and blood sacrifice and animal sacrifice to deities. And, the Nigerians would talk about a god called the Mami Water. The anti-Christians would talk about the Leviathan. There were gods such as Odin would be utilized in it. Bacchus, Lucifer, Baal. Right. There was a whole plethora of these gods, and each one had a different demonic reign that they took over. But you would also get reports of manifestations that would occur in which the high priest would become very big, one person said that the high priest was actually a vicar. This church would be used for satanic ritual sacrifice, and during the ritual, this vicar he would manifest, and he would become like 15 foot tall, very skinny, very wiry looking.
Wow.
And things like that. So I have heard of manifestations that have occurred, but they've occurred in like the real frenetic epicenter of these rituals when the energy is high and the child has been sacrificed.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the BBC is also. I should say I don't think the BBC actually had any connection to Pinewood. I mean, I worked at the BBC for 40 years, and I know the studio system pretty well. They might have been using Pinewood, but Pinewood wasn't a BBC studio. And not that I'm in any way supporting the BBC, because when I was there, of course, Jimmy Savile was in the same studio as me, and it was well known that with friends of mine who were like makeup artists, that they wouldn't go in the makeup room with Savile. And what's really shocking is that we kind of all knew I wasn't in any management position to do anything about it, but certainly Savile's management was, and they didn't do anything. So what was this kind of cover-up going on? I mean, he was absolutely evil.
Well, you've got to look at those that go against it. So I got trolled because I talk about child abuse. Now, child abuse is very emotive. Yeah. There's a lot of victims of child abuse, but there are also a lot of victims that go on to perpetrate child abuse. There's a lot of people that harbour a lot of guilt. They don't know what I know or what I don't know as a detective, and I get hit with this wall of resistance sometimes. And I get people say John Wedger works for the intelligence services, and it's all madness. But there's a lot of people that are very, very broken and very, very mentally ill because they've been sexually abused as a child. Yeah. It has a long-term detrimental effect. Yep. You also get a lot of people get caught up in conspiracies because they see a conspiracy in a lot of things. They have a need for justice because justice brings about healing, and when they don't get it, they sort of accuse sort of anyone who's part of the criminal justice system as being a child stealing social worker or a Freemasonic child eating police officer. And that's because the emotional self has an inability to reason, right? Sure. A lot of ritual abuse survivors will be paranoid about helicopters. They will see everyone who's watching them, following them. You know, that there is that degree of paranoia about them. Helicopters is a real big one. They get absolutely spooked by it, and bits and pieces like that. But you also, when I started talking about ritual abuse, it really upped its game in the trolling against me. And I started getting mainstream publications going against me. So Channel 4 did employ a production company called Tortoise Media to try and do a defamatory piece on me regarding the abuse case in Hampstead with the two little children that were alleged to have been ritually abused there. They didn't get any mileage out of me on that one. And the other one is Private Eye Magazine, Ian Hislop and Rosalind Waterhouse. Dr. Rosalind Waterhouse, Rosie Waterhouse, is a professor of journalism, really. And she lectures at an elite university in London on it. Has worked for big mainstream media publications, and she has a massive hatred for me. She even has a tour that she does. Is this like talking tour about the satanic panic and the nonsense that is Satanism. And she dedicates out of a 60-minute rant diatribe, she dedicates 20 minutes to Donald Trump, 20 minutes to someone else, and 20 minutes to attacking me. And she sees me as the biggest threat to sort of criminal justice when it comes to kids being taken into care, because I speak out about what she believes is a myth, which is Satanism, which isn't a myth. The most rudimentary. The most rudimentary searches will prove, that Satanism is alive and well, and it's never gone away. But and of course she had a big stronghold in Private Eye magazine, and of course you see the likes of Ian Hislop. They are mainstream and they're everywhere. So years ago there was a lawyer, a barrister for the CPS, who had actually survived satanic ritual abuse as a child and managed to escape the environment and went on to compose herself and go on to get to the bar and become quite an esteemed barrister for the prosecution. And she got herself a job with the CPS, and she had an input with the Metropolitan Police's very elite detective training school. You know, it's renowned throughout the world as a centre of excellence. And she had an input on teaching detectives about how to recognise if a crime is ritually motivated, such as ecclesiastical settings and special door bins. The FBI have an actual training course on this. The South African police are by far the most established in the world. Yeah. And the Vatican also sponsors a similar thing in Italy. The Italian police have an occult crimes unit. The Met Police has nothing, absolutely nothing. Right. And her input was the first one. It was incredibly well received. But there was opposition, and it came in the form of someone who was a detective chief inspector, who's sort of a bit of my nemesis. I won't name him for legal reasons, but he crops up absolutely everywhere as a mouthpiece for the Met Police, especially when it comes to ritual abuse stuff. And he, you know, he's been rumoured to have connections to the occult himself, and he actually went out of his way to get this barrister removed from the Detective Foundation course, and with no explanation. She was removed. So you always hit a nerve when you talk about Satanism, always.
Hey,
and the opposition is quite extreme,
organised.
You know? Organised and extreme and very spiteful.
John, I'm going to jump in here, mate, because, you know, you're coming from a very unique perspective. Simon as well, from the BBC perspective. But one of the reasons why I wanted to put this episode together is that me and Matt, we're just normal blokes from up north. And we've fallen into this subject just by essentially researching UFOs. But that has led to this discovery of this behind the veil, this team of people that's operating behind the curtain, that's suppressing the information surrounding not just the UFOs, but after digging into the UFOs, and we spoke about this at length on the phone, it led us to sort of consciousness. It led us to ancient history, about human history and sort of where we were, where we came from. That's led us onto these religions, where the origin stories of these religions are. That comes around to consciousness. But then, you know, when you're looking into this, and this subject has led to one disclosure after the other, you know, different realizations. But it always comes back to the same group of people, this elite group of people behind this curtain who are seemingly worshipping this dark entity. And it's all over the Epstein files. And we spoke about this the other day. And I wanted to link this in because this is just two guys from Manchester that have come in, and we've found essentially the final door of which unveils.
Can I just jump in?
Yeah, go on.
So, John, just a little bit back. So for over 20 years, researching UFO stuff, it's gone from nuts and bolts and are we alone in the universe to there's a consistent pattern, and it's children. What's going on with the children? Now, what we're seeing is from the ages of 0 to 7. I don't know what stats you can give on children that are abused or in these things. They seem to be from the ages of 0 to 7. And that's what we're seeing from the UFO side. We're also finding out they're taking them from Indonesia and from these war-torn countries. They're being trafficked. They're being used for the conspiracy of the adrenochrome. And now we're getting the conspiracy of the psionics, and psionics is being spoken about with a consciousness, and they're being put through all these testings, and it can kill them, these tests. And it's a consistent thing, something I dismissed when I was 19, 20. I'm 40 years old, and I'm talking to a professor there and an ex-police officer now about it. It's insane. I did not think 20 years later I'd be speaking about it to people like yourselves. It's something that you'd speak about with your friends in a kitchen when you're having a drink or something. It's something that is really going on. And if you look at the stats on how many children go missing worldwide, it's insane. I think it's 800,000 just in the USA alone this year, 100,000 in the UK this year, where we should be seeing articles every single day of children going missing.
What you've got to look at, see, I dealt with missing children. Yes, probably 100,000 do go missing. But how many return? Well, I'm telling you now, 99.9% return. Right. They do return. There is a percentage that does go missing and never found, but they do return. So this is, look, if 100,000 kids went missing every year. Within 10 years, 1 million children would be missing.
Right.
So what
Sure.
do you
We
make
won't
of
have any-
these charities and these organisations, these big organisations, UNICEF, Oxfam, getting covered in scandals around child abuse, being in these countries where children aren't documented and registered the way that they are in our Western countries? They can go missing quite easily in those.
Well, they probably do. I mean, I couldn't, like for India, for example, I mean, how do you keep a national register for India? If you look at Kenya, there's no voters register in Kenya. I've tried tracking down a murderer in Kenya. It was impossible. And a lot of streets don't even have street names. So it's, whereas the UK does have a register of people, whereas countries like India don't. You know, they do, but it'll be rudimentary. But then let's look at this in a bit of a different way. And I'm corroborating what you're saying. I'm not going against it, but my point is, people look to America, the Epstein. Do you know what? If you've been researching this, what about the guest house list? What about Dolphin Square?
Yeah.
What about kids' home after kids' home, where kids went missing and were never seen again? What about a guy? Can I interject and ask? Has anyone heard of a man called Nicholas Fairbairn?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Right, Simon. Let me elaborate on it. Nicholas Fairbairn was a lord. He was he was the advocate depute for Scotland, which means he was head of the whole justice system for Scotland.
Yeah. Very carefully chosen position.
Yeah, right. So let's go on about him, because we do, everything gets Americanized all the time. And what that does is it takes away from the focus of what we've had in this country. We had these exposures. Why are we shaking our heads and scratching our heads thinking nothing's happening with the Epstein inquiry? Well, what happened with the IOPCC inquiry?
Right.
Well, no, sorry, the ICSA inquiry, nothing. And
The
8-year inquiry into children abused, missing and murdered. Nothing happened to it.
I want to say, though, John, I agree with you. I want to say I agree with you. I'm not making this about the Epstein. The reason I brought that up was simply to tie it into the Starmer Mandelson scandal.
I'll get that. And let me come on to Mandelson. And again, so I'm corroborating you, but I want to localize this, because when we look away to foreign shores, we can distance ourselves. And this is what paedophiles do. When paedophiles go into foreign shores, they create an anonymity for themselves. And we can do that with statistics. We can make an anonymity with it. No, we have to make this a reality, not an anonymity. Now, Nicholas Fairbairn was in charge of the whole Scottish justice system. The Scottish inquiry, the national inquiry from Scotland, finished 2 years later than the British one. The Northern Ireland, Welsh and English one. Scotland had its own one. There was a care home called Forneath in Perthshire, right, which is rural. They were taking kids for respite care and kids of sort of maladjusted nature, right? That was the guys, okay? They were taking them out of the West Coast, which is impoverished Strathclyde region. They were picking on the poor, right? So going on about Indonesia, they're picking on the poor. They were picking on the poor of Strathclyde. Drunken mums, absent dads. We see the same pattern all the time, right? We see the same. Creates poverty and dysfunctionality. They're the ones, because no one's coming looking for them. Same as the Indonesian kids, no one's coming looking for them. These little girls were taken away, divested from a loving home environment, maybe not, and taken to rural Perthshire. Scotland is the second most sparsely populated country in Europe.
Right.
England is the second most densely. Scotland's, there's hardly anyone who lives in Scotland, especially in the Highlands, especially in a place like Perthshire. They were put in this home. The moment they were in there, they were beaten, they were whipped, they were caned, they were sexually abused, mainly by female staff. But then during the day, a man would come round and pick out young girls, point them out. Them girls would be drugged, and then they would wake up in a posh house like a castle, right? And hang on a second. Can you still see and hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, pal.
Right. It's just someone's ringing. I'll let them go. Anyway, let me keep talking. Anyway, so, but when the system the inquiry came to fruition, and they realised these girls were being trafficked. Again, trafficking is a removal of a child or a person for the purpose of crime from point A to point B. So we've always had trafficking, right? So it's not anything that's new. we've had it. And again, I localise things, you see. I don't distance them, I localise them, right? So these kids were trafficked out to this posh castle, and out of 20, 15 of them pointed out their rapist and abuser, and it was Nicholas Fairbairn. Nicholas Fairbairn was also linked to a guy called Bob Henderson, who was a QC on the child protection family court system, right? The two of them were involved in the kidnap and murder and rape of a rent boy. So this goes to show that these people don't care if it's girls or boys.
No.
Right. And this is one thing we see. We used to call them trisexuals. They're not homo. They're not hetero. They're not bi. They'll try anything. They'll try. They don't care as long as it's a kid. Now, I want to come back to something that one of you said earlier on, and I'm going to bring it back to it. Right. Nicholas Fairbairn was linked to the murder of children, to the rape of young girls on an industrial level. He was in charge of the whole justice system. And at that relevant time, his unofficial girlfriend, the woman he was having an affair with, was a woman called Esther Ranson, who was running the biggest kids charity for child protection ever. Right, okay, why was no one outraged? Like the Epstein file. Now let's go on about you're saying the children 0, 1 to 7. Let's look at our child protection laws, the Children's Act, right, and the offences against children. They are age specific. If you offend against a child 7 and under, it's classed as a serious arrestable offence. So even the law knows that. And they know also in spiritual doctrines that if you damage a child under the age of 7, you damage them forever, right? And there was a group in America called NAMBLA, the North American Boy Lovers Association. And they had a motto, and it was 8 is too late.
Ooh.
So even unofficially within this paedophilic, organised, constructed world, they knew the value of children of that age, that prepubescent, under 7. But also that our legal system, our statute law knows it. So because our laws are based on Christian values, so they know that there is a damage that is so profound, not 8 on onwards, but beneath that age, they know the detriment it has. So they always
John,
know.
You mentioned something there, mate. You mentioned Children's Charity and Esther Ranson. We're seeing that crop up now with Fergie. She has a children's charity. That's correct in the UK. Is that correct?
Probably. I don't know. Maybe. I know she does. No. She writes kids' books and all that.
But there seems to be, this is another pattern that you look at. These people that seem to crop up in these dodgy circles and with various accusations against them, they always seem to be linked to some kind of children's trust or something that makes them close to essentially where the prey is.
Yeah.
Well, let's go on about Peter Mandelson. So back in the late 90s, there was a woman called Dr. Joan Coleman. Dr. Joan Coleman was a leading psychotherapist for the leading psychotherapy unit in the world, and that was the Maudsley Hospital in London. Right. And she started looking into the more damaged cases of child abuse that were coming her way. Okay, the severe depression, the suicidal, the psychotic episodes that the more damaged people were. Right. And she found that these more she concentrated on this demographic of the really damaged, and they had a condition known as DID, dissociated identity disorder, and we used to call it multiple personalities. So she decided to interview these people, and she found it problematic because they had things called alters, and their personalities would switch between one personality and another, right? And when she got down to it, what was involved in it, it was because they was so severely traumatized, and it was a combination of torture. They've witnessed murders, they've been involved in murders of animals and other children, and a thing called satanic ritual abuse. Yeah. So she decided to put together a journal, right, that held weight, that could be a public document. And in order to do something, she had to do it to a journalistic standard. So it had to be corroborated by 2 or more totally independent, uncorroborated sources. So if two or more people mentioned the same person, place, or event, she was now journalistically sound, and she could then put that down in this docket. This docket went on to formulate a report called the RAINS list. It's an acronym, RAINS, Ritual Abuse Information Network Support. It's a 16-page document about Satanism throughout the 90s and 2000s in the UK. It outlined addresses, phone numbers, car registrations of those involved, and names those involved. My old boss on the Vice unit is named in this. And funny enough, he's the same person who is used by the BBC and Channel 4 when it comes to giving his opinion on child abuse. Yet he is named to a journalistic standard in this document. There are members of stage, theatre, politics, and Peter Mandelson is named in there as being involved in the murder of a young boy in a ritualistic environment back in the mid to late 90s. He's named, and they actually
to a journalistic standard as well.
Yeah, and you can Google this list. I've put it on my website a million times, and it was
something that I did a video on there, John, because I mentioned and I quoted. This is a quote directly from the UK government. We have the most capable intelligence services in the world. Now, I was in the military for 20 years. I know what kind of vetting that everybody needs to go through just to be a soldier on the front line. Never mind dealing with top secret and classifications way above. I know that Mandelson is the third in line, essentially, to Starmer. Starmer appointed Lammy, and Lammy appointed Mandelson, and all underneath David Lammy is the intelligence services. So the fact that they quoted as being the most capable in the world, yet they appointed Peter Mandelson to the ambassador position in Washington, would suggest either they're not the most capable services in the world, thus need a dramatic investigation and an overhaul, or they are very capable and they knew about it and didn't do anything about it, in which case they need a massive investigation and a overhaul. Whichever way you skin it, somebody's got to be culpable for this because they appointed him. But the point, we're seeing this time and time and again, and it ties into everything you've said, John, so far. And this ties into the UFO thing. You see the same tactics, this discrediting of anybody that comes forward with anything that looks like feasible and reliable information, this discreditation.
But I turn around when people ask me, should I speak out? I say, listen, I wouldn't advise anyone to go against the government because there's a good chance it could kill you. But the other thing is be clean. Be clean. You must be clean. You can't be someone who is going and doing cocaine at the weekends. You can't be someone who's shagging around everywhere on the internet and all that. You can't, because they're going to find you and they're going to come for you and they're going to ruin you. Be clean, and this is why Russell Brand's in a world of shit at the moment, because there's no way that man is clean. I mean, his journey to Christ might be questionable, it might not. Only time will see that. If he's being honest, then he should be repenting and admitting to his wrongdoing. But he's not a clean man. And it's as simple as that. Now, the problem you get is that you can deal with stuff as a civilian police officer until it gets to a point where it has political or financial stability issues. So if the information you've got could cause political instability or financial instability to the nation, it is taken out of your hands and it is given to the military intelligence units. They then take control of reporting. They have reporting restrictions in a thing known as a D notice. Now, a D notice is served on journalists to keep their silence, but the D, no one knows what it stands for, right? But it stands for defense notice.
Right.
It was brought in It was brought in by Winston Churchill during the First World War under the old slogan, "Loose lips sink ships." And that's what a D notice was brought in. So when you look at these things, why are they serving D notices on civilian issues? Because it has military intelligence worth. That means it's got blackmail value. We're looking at blackmail. Peter Mandelson, he's even got that nickname, is it the Prince of Darkness or whatever they call it?
Right.
I mean, where did that come from? And you're right, what you say about vetting. I did develop vetting, and they needed to know all my sexual partners, and they needed to know my financial situation, that I wasn't in debt, because these are two things that cause people to falter and to be blackmailed.
Yeah.
Because, and that's why you rarely see homosexuals pass developed vetting.
Right.
And another example of it is that in British policing, they've never promoted a Belfast Catholic above the rank of chief superintendent, never,
Right.
because they can't trust them. That's the theory, and that came out because a colleague of mine challenged it and found that out. So they do have these unwritten rules. Now,
right.
A few years ago, there was a very brave woman ran a kids charity called Kids Company, and there was Camilla Batman Gellich.
Yeah.
Camilla had information. She didn't run stay-in overnight charity. She ran day centres. And a lot of these kids were subject to care orders and were being taken places by their care workers and that, and being abused. So she approached me and asked me if I would help her look into what's happening to these children. I said, of course, because I know what happens to kids that go missing. They get dragged into the sex trade. That's what 90% of them end up doing. You know, they get dragged into that. That's why they go missing, because they're absconding from care to work in the sex trade. Now, she said to me, how do I know that my beneficiaries and those I'm rubbing shoulders with are not paedophiles? I said, well, look, I don't, but I can give you this document. And I handed her the RAINS list. Camilla Batman Gellich handed the RAINS list by the end of that week direct into the hands of David Cameron and said, get your own house in order before you point the finger at me. By the end of that next week, her charity was shut down, and all
she
her
was shut down. Yeah.
She was shut down. That's what caused her to go down, because of that RAINS list. There was another guy called Mike Veal. Mike Veal was the chief constable for Wiltshire Police. He set up Operation Conifer, and it was to look at the nefarious child raping of Ted Heath. Right? There was 33 credible victims of Ted Heath, most of them men, that when they were boys, they were raped by Ted Heath. Mike Veal boldly stated on Sky News that had Ted Heath been alive today, he would have been arrested by Mike's unit.
That's the guy that David Icke said's a fucking reptilian. He looked him up and down. Do you remember?
Yeah. Ted Heath, not Mike Veal. I say not Mike Veal's brilliant.
No, Ted Heath. Yeah, but David Icke tells you a story about Ted Heath.
Well, Mike Veal then said live on Sky News he has credible information that Ted Heath is involved in satanic ritual abuse.
Well,
he said it.
It's funny you said. You remember when he said they grow when they do these ritual things? Well, apparently he was told that Ted Heath was in one of these rituals. Who was Ted Heath's right-hand man? You'll know him when you know that. I can't remember the name. It's a bit before my time, but he was next to him and he grew like you described during this ritualistic thing. And it was in the UK, and it gave the location as well of where it was in the UK. I can't fucking remember where it was.
It was outside. It was in some Christian like churchyards or something.
Yeah,
and
but
it stumbled upon, and people saw this ritual going on. And when they looked closely at who these figures were in robes, it was the British Prime Minister or ex-Prime Minister Ted Heath and others.
There was a lot of information came forward, and it spurred from it. Its inception was in the RAINS list. And it was a venue down in Sussex called Hawkhurst.
Oh, yeah.
Right, Hawkhurst. There's ancient tunnels, the smuggling tunnels and things like that. But they run through a property that's got diplomatic privilege. And information was coming in that, rituals would take place in this Hawkhurst manor or whatever it was.
Yeah.
But it was owned by the Russian embassy. The Russians always denied it, and there was information that homeless people were taken there, and they were used in what's called what a popular thing that is involved with the satanic stuff is called the hunt, where they would get children and homeless people, put them in a wooded area, strip them naked, and then chase them. And when they catch them, they beat them, kill them, rape them, do whatever they want with them. I've heard of it, of a kid's home in Bristol it went on, but I heard of it gone on in this place, but they'd used homeless people and hunted them down for sport and killed them.
Well, you hear about that sort of stuff, and this is like the Zorro Ranch stuff. You hear victims talking about that kind of shit from there. But these, and the point I'm making by just tying this in, and I know John's keeping things local, but the reason I'm expanding that is because the world's talking about these files. Okay, and it talks about this crazy darkness and ridiculous things and themes and things like what John's mentioned about this hunt, and it doesn't sound real. But what John's telling you is from our very own shores, so you can see how it's tying in. And all the people that John's talking about, they're all
let me just say something.
If I could just finish that, what happened was that it all got denied, and the Russians said, the embassy said no. And then during COVID, I don't know, one of the fences fell down and some sheep from the local pasture land wandered in through a gap into this embassy place, and they were attacked by these dogs and they were ripped up, and then it ended up in the court. And when they got disclosure, the people who owned the dogs couldn't get prosecuted because they claimed diplomatic protection from under the Russian government. So it proved to be right. Okay. See, my point with all of this is you've got to keep credulous, right? You've got to keep your credulity. You've got to be credible because you'll be pushed down. So whatever you do, and I do it to a good degree because of my background beyond all reasonable doubt, if I put something out there, I want to put out there a conviction in a court that backs it up, or an incident that backs it up. Because otherwise, these intellectuals like Rosie Waterhouse and Ian Hislop and that will rubbish you. Tortoise media and all that, they will go out their way to rubbish you and class you as a nutcase.
Thing is, John, I think the burden of proof lays with them now. I mean, there's that much documentation and evidence and whistleblower testimony that suggests this happens. I don't think the burden of proof is with us anymore. I don't think we're the tinfoil wearing conspiracy theorists we used to be. I think the game's changed.
Well, you'd like to think so, but the COVID thing showed how far we have to go because so many people bought that COVID lie, not just once, but they bought it a second time. And I've heard people say, well, there'll never be another lockdown. They won't get away with it. Yes, they will. They'll get it, and you'll probably get the same percentage of people believe it. Unless that fact is put in front of their face, they don't believe it. They just dismiss it all as absolute nonsense.
Talk about it on this, John. We need to talk this and bring these conversations to the living rooms of real people because this shit affects us all. And it just flows downhill, Well,
it always has done, always has done. I mean,
it has.
Churches have done it from the beginning. They've warned us against the devil and the evils of the devil and everything else. I mean, even when you look at Matthew Hopkins, a lot of his work was around Hertfordshire and Essex. And when you really research Matthew Hopkins, there was a real amount of fairness to what he did. And it's not that he just burned anyone with a cat and dumped it. It wasn't there. There was almost to a reasonable doubt burden of proof to what he did. And at the end of him, he dealt with them however he dealt with them. But there was a need for it because there was so much witchcraft going on. So much of it. I mean, right, let me give you something. The country in Europe that was the last to turn away from paganism. Do you know it?
Germany?
No, it was Lithuania.
Oh, yeah.
And it's got a massive pagan following still. Huge, and they just morph it into Catholicism. And it's the same in Nigeria, that they will morph Christianity into voodoo. And a lot of the times they share the same places. So you'll get someone will go to the local pastor for some deliverance healing, but at the same time, if they're not happy with him, they'll go to the juju man. Benin. Benin, 30% of the population of Benin worship voodoo. 30% of it. You know, they've got president at the moment.
What do all of the religions have in common, though, John? We were talking about this the other day on the phone, and Simon, you could probably blend something to this. They've all got these fear-based narratives, and they've all been manipulated to control people. That's the problem with all of those religions. We spoke, John, the other day about the Catholic Church, and that's no doubt something that you guys can speak
Totally.
about. How they've invaded a lot of this.
The thing that I literally came across, and John's come across this with this hierarchy of government and judges and senior police officers, is that this goes on in Britain. It's not there seems to be an ancient belief system in Britain which is totally bought into by people who have massive amount of government, financial and old money control over British society. And they are completely into it. They see Christianity and the Church of England as idiots, and they have this ritualistic, you could call it pagan, it's just old religion, which they still follow. And it's in Britain, and it's in a lot of other countries as well. Obviously, African countries have their religious beliefs, but I was just absolutely horrified that these people have tentacles in the upper echelons of British society. I've met them.
Well, it's not, and it's not going to go away either. And the moment you get into it, so there's a film called Deliver Us from Evil, and it's about a New York detective called Ralph Sarchi, and he teams up with a Jesuit priest called Malachi Martin. Malachi Martin, very, very well known. He's he wrote a book called Windswept House. He's an exorcist for the Catholic Church. And the two of them started looking into crimes around the South Bronx area because of the massive amounts of Cubans, Puerto Ricans that were heavily involved in Santa Muerte and Santeria. And they started then discerning what murders had a ritualistic connotation to it. Sure. And then they started looking at things like demonic possession that was involved in it. And their work went massively through the roof after the first Gulf War. Men coming back absolutely screwed, and that were turning their back on God. We got a thing in this country called the Spiritualist Church movement, and when you look at the Spiritualist churches, it's sort of contrary to Christianity massively, but it had a huge, and still has a huge following, in which they would do a clairvoyant part of the service. Now, where did they come about? Well, they came about after the First World War, because people turned their back on Christianity, because they said, how can a God send my son? And a lot of these women were in need to have comfort. And of course, the charlatans from the spiritualist churches appeared and said, we'll come along, pay a few quid, and we'll put you in touch with them. And that's where now I was contacted by a woman who worked for MI6 for many, many years. She's written a book about it, and she now she resides, I think, in South America. Anyway, her job was to go around and monitor spiritualist churches.
Oh, yeah.
And she would go all around the country, and she would then try and recognise, and also these like these alternative healing groups and things like that. And her job was to infiltrate them and see if anyone actually did have an ability to contact the other side, and actually if they didn't. And and that's what, and they tied into a part of a thing called the remote viewing unit, which the CIA have got.
I know.
And then there's a guy called Tobias Yonker, an amazing guy, and he runs the South African Occult Crimes Unit, which is based, I think it's either in Durban or Johannesburg, and they go around and deal with what they call muti killings, a tremendous amount of murders, ritualistic murders that occur. And he's got two criteria to join his unit. You've got to be a murder squad detective to a murder squad level, and you must be a Christian, because you cannot go looking into this if you have not got the covering of Christ. And that's his, and he says people that join this that haven't got that, they end up going mentally ill, they go mad. And it's the same with Satanism. It's a cursed environment.
John, I wanted to mention, because people, we're talking a lot about the religion and the spirituality element of this, and maybe the average person who's listening from the armchair doesn't quite understand just how close they are to this, essentially what is a battle between good and bad and dark and light. And I want to reiterate that point by mentioning this. Our entire front bench of our current government is part of the Fabian Society, which are heavily linked with Peter Thiel from Palantir. And Peter Thiel, he's just done a 2-day, convention where he's demonstrated and talked about and discussed the Antichrist outside the Vatican City in Rome. So if people think that this isn't a spiritual thing, the very high ups and the people that we've been talking about so far, the elites of these echelons, they are looking at this from a spiritual point of view. So we better, wake up quick.
Well,
this is a lot deeper than...
people don't believe in it. Well, that's their choice, isn't it? God gave us freedom of choice. But let me tell you something. When I speak to survivors of ritual abuse in the United Kingdom, and I've done a little bit with the Nigerian community, right? But in the United Kingdom, right? They worship these deities. These are fallen deities, right? And they come under these 9 demonic realms, right? And they revere them. But you never ever hear a term anti-Allah, anti-Muhammad, anti-Buddha, anti-Ganesh, anti-Krishna, never. But you do hear a term throughout this, anti-Christ. It's anti-Christ, because the enemy is Christ, Jesus Christ. Their enemy is not Allah. It is not Buddha. And in fact, there are 5 deities in the Hindu religion that are venerated and revered within Satanism. Kali being one of them. What's the other one? Shiva. These are gods that are used in Satanism that's crossover. But there will be part of a ritual that will be against Christ. Yeah. Right. And that's what they do. And what they'll do is they'll get a lamb, for example. I've heard this, and they'll say this is the Lamb of God, and they'll mutilate in front of the child. So the child, whenever she hears the word Lamb of God, she will remember that. The book of Isaiah is used a lot, because in Isaiah, there's a quote where they're the devil's venerating himself, and he was saying, "I will rise above the clouds, I will exalt above the throne." And the last one is 5 of them. The last one is, "I will be like the Most High," but he never will be. And in Satanism, there is the ceremonies of the I wills, and they worship each I will, and they're done at 13-year increments. So the first one, there will be the I will rise above the throne. So there will be this I will ceremony where the 13-year-old child who's been born into Satanism can go about their life normal and everything else, but before they are brought in, they're very date specific, very time specific, very disciplined. With their numbers mean a lot to these people.
Oh yeah.
And sodomy is massively involved. This is why you see sodomy in a lot of the posh schools. It's a way of breaking someone's will, but it's a very, very demonically charged thing. Yeah. And they will conduct the I will, but there will be a sacrifice, right? And then that gets left alone till the next I will. Okay. And then when that comes about, that person knows what's coming next. They know there's going to be a sacrifice, but they're told that you are married to the devil now. There is nothing you can do. If you come out of this, you die. The next year you die. Right. So the second I will, they attain the age of 26. And at the age of 26, this was a Satanist told me this. There's those that say, "I'm not doing this anymore. I'm walking away." The next year they die. What age does that make them? 27. Have you not heard of the 27 Club? Right. You've not heard of the 27 Club? Janis Joplin, Amy Winehouse, Jim Morrison, Jimi Hendrix.
Oh shit.
That's the 27 Club. That's because they've refused to acquiesce to the second I will, because their inner self says, I don't want to do this no more.
Wow.
But there's a benefit in it. The devil rewards straight away. Jesus rewards in his own time. But the devil rewards straight away.
Holy shit.
And that's why they get whatever they want. And that's what the 27 Club is. You know?
Sorry, can you just repeat that? I had to rush to the toilet. Can you just quickly just read what you're on about there with the 27?
It's a bit of a spiel.
Just give us a quick... I can wait till the end. They can film me at the end. You know what? I'll just watch it back. I'll watch it back.
It's to do with a satanic ritual called the I Wills. And it's mentioned in the book of Isaiah, the Old Testament. And there's 5 I Wills, and they're at 13-year increments. And the person in Satanism, usually born into it, will have to attend each one. And they will involve sodomy, sacrifice, and a few other various horrible things. But 13-year one, they'll do it and they're appalled by it. But then they'll benefit from being into the satanic realm. But then the next one, the 26th one, they might have woken up and thought, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to do this. And then they run away from it. But what they're told, the next year you'll die. And of course, they implode a year later at the age of 27 because they will not attend. They will not attend. They turn their back on it.
Just name some of those celebrities, John. Listen to this.
Amy Winehouse, Kurt
Jim
Cobain.
Morrison, Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin. There's loads of them. You know,
look at the other ones like Britney and Justin and that. How old were they when they lost the marbles? You know what I mean? Started going off the rails. Was it 27-ish?
Well, yeah, and it'll go on, but there others will benefit from it. But they've sold their soul and they know it. See, this saying "I sold my soul." It's not just a quip, is it? I mean, it's a reality. This is what happens. But they sell their soul to the devil. They don't sell their soul to the spirit of the universe or whatever it is. This is a reality. And when you look into this topic, it's cursed in a veil of the demonic. Even looking into it, even talking about it now, I'll be praying after this. I will. Right. And I suggest everyone else do their own sort of thing because we're looking into a cursed environment. The whole thing is veiled in a curse.
John, you mentioned fallen angels just a few minutes ago, and you've also obviously talked heavily about the Bible now. What's her name? Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna. She's been questioned heavily about the UFO subject recently, about these declassifications of files that are coming. And basically, she's been very ambiguous, but one of the things that she did say was if you want to get a good understanding of what's happening, have a look at the Book of Enoch. Yep. Now, that ties into the religion, that ties into the fallen angels. What do you make of that? Have you looked at the Book of Enoch, John?
No, because it's an uncanonized book, so I've not looked at it. But, I mean, I do know, like, the Coptics Christians from Ethiopia, you know, they have the Book of Enoch, the Book of Jubilees, and there's a couple more. Which does go into it. But you get that from Genesis 6 anyway. Genesis 6 and Genesis 3 go into greater detail than I've been told the Book of Enoch does about the fallen, about those that come from the other realms. You look in the Book of Numbers, funny enough, Numbers 13:33, which are the most occultic numbers going. Book of Numbers, it goes on about the giants. You know, it goes on about the Nephilim. They call them the Anuks. You know, isn't it funny how Star Wars has Anakin Skywalker? That the Anuks are mentioned in the Bible. And again, the book of Genesis goes on about them. You know, the giants of old. You know, those are renowned.
Well, this ties into, you know, and Simon, I don't know if you've heard about this. Matty, I know you certainly have. We've all heard. I mean, I've certainly. We spoke about the Kandahar Giant before. You know, this is an operation that went on in early 2000 in Iraq. Yeah. And we heard about this. There was a military, I think the US Marines, they were on a patrol. They came across this cave. Yeah. There was a monster, basically a giant human that came out, rushed them, killed the entire lot. And then the follow-up patrol went in, managed to take it down. And then whatever this giant was, and apparently it was about 10 feet, stunk, was huge, red hair, 6 toes, 6 fingers, stuff that's been referenced before. It was flown out all the way back to Wright-Patterson. And this ties into Neil McCaslin, this missing scientist at the moment, where he worked. He was there at the time during that stint. Wow. And then we talk about the DNA element of this and where they were looking at the DNA of people and how and what they've been trying to do beneath ground. It ties it all in. And then we look at the spiritual element. It all ties in together. And this is what I wanted to sort of achieve with this podcast today, guys.
No, I agree. I'd like to say something kind of real big statement about Britain. I think so. I mean, it's global. There's, non-Christian and other religions all over the world. But the more I've dug into the UFO world, and John mentioned distant viewing, remote viewing, SRI, CIA, and he also mentioned places like big mental teaching hospitals in Britain and Birkbeck College and a whole lot of stuff. Britain was open to the idea of actually assisting projects, American projects, which were seen as not as demonic, anti-Christian in the United States. We British people have got institutions and organizations and people in power who have bought into these things. I think that things like MK Ultra and other quite dangerous experiments that became very unpopular in the United States moved offshore. I know some of them have moved to Canada, but I actually think quite a lot were involved in Britain. I mean, I've spoken to people like Uri Geller. I mean, Uri Geller lived in Caversham outside of Reading. I mean, he was working at Caversham Park. They were doing distant viewing. I think the Rendlesham Forest incident is associated with this. I think there's laboratories where they were really interested in how humans were affected by high-level physics and possibly non-human kind of stuff. Who knows? But Britain was always open to it. Britain has this kind of system of if it's good for Britain, we'll do it, and us elites will F the normal people and do whatever they want. I mean, things like the back in the 1960s, Porton Down had a euphemistic place called the Cold and Flu Center, where you could go and actually be injected with a coronal virus, which is a virus for flu, and see how it affected you. It was never about cold and flu. It was a weaponization laboratory associated with.
Yeah, do you remember that guy?
Yeah,
that guy who spoke out about Porton Down, and he was driving along and he crashed. His car was blown up at a petrol station next to it.
Oh, well, that's tragic. I mean, Porton Down is extremely secret.
He worked for Marconi, and he was on a project with Porton Down. And as he drove out, they reckon he was off to speak out. And his car was pushed into a petrol station. It blew up. But I had a few people tell me of different sites. And one of them was in Donegal, in Ireland, right? And I was told about a boy that was abducted from Belfast. Right. He was taken over the border into Donegal, and he was murdered there at a town called Killybegs. And it was a ritualistic murder. But then they also told me about a site called Finna Camp. Finna Camp is the National Irish Army's one of their big barracks, right? And when you look at Finna Camp, this woman told me that there'll be this place outside where all the Satanists would go to. And it turns out the Finna Camp is built on the grounds of a megalithic burial site.
Right.
And then when you look at the other places that get mentioned, they're mentioned in Salisbury, they're mentioned all on MOD land. All on MOD land.
The whole of Salisbury, yeah, and in Scotland. I mean, I'm Scottish, and the amount of sites, you mentioned some mental hospitals. There are Perthshire, outside of Glasgow, Strathclyde, and in Ayrshire, there are definitely very strange experiments. I heard this story about this kid who went into a Scottish mental hospital, and the nurse, he didn't have a a gown. So she went out to the corridor and just got this blue gown and put it on him. And the doctor came in and said, "Get that gown off." And she said, "What's wrong?" And he said, and he shouldn't have said this to the nurse, who I know, he said, "Oh, that's the US military gown for the child experiments." Like, what? She had no idea. It was in a wing that was controlled by America.
Isn't it weird how children's homes are always positioned next to mental hospitals?
Yeah.
They built them, and that was the right. Once they'd done what they wanted, they ended up in there. If they were going to speak out, they interned them. Now, this case in Belfast, it was a little boy that went missing.
Right.
And he formed a group called the Belfast Five. And from 1976 to about 1980, 5 children went missing from a kids' home called Kincora in Belfast. And there was a lot of allegations of sexual abuse went on there. And it was also used as espionage for the troubled times, but mainly concentrating on the Protestant side of it. And there was a kids' home called Kirkcorbin, which kids were rented out to the priests and the Catholics for espionage on that front. But one kid that went missing, his name was Brian McDermott. And after he went missing, his body was found a few months later in the River Lagan, and it had been mutilated. It had a limb cut off and was beheaded. Now, someone came to me a little while back, and I did a documentary on it. I did a talk on it. And she said, look, he was killed in a satanic ritual. And I know it was him because I was there. I was a little child. But my parents were Satanists, and I was put in the same area as him. And I was abused in the ritual. But Brian was murdered, and they cut off his left arm. His left arm was cut off. And
that's insane. It's disgusting.
And whoever cut off his left arm, they held his left arm above them. There was a big cheer, and then the place descended into an orgy of bestiality and child abuse. Now, what is interesting is the Satanists will attack the left side because in Italian and in Latin, left is sinister.
Yeah.
Sinister, right? It's called the devil's side. So
they used to say if you're left-handed, you're part of the devil, aren't you? My dad was left-handed, so they used to call him the devil, my dad, because he was left-handed.
Yeah. And anything left is sinister. It's the devil's side. Now, I contacted the RUC, now the PSNI, the Police Service in Northern Ireland.
Yeah.
And I said to him that I've got this information, you need to have it, because that's how I work. You know, what's the point of keeping it secret? Tell everyone. It needs to be told. So they said, okay, we'll talk to you. I said, well, can you listen to one of my my documentaries? So they watched this thing on Brian McDermott, and they said to me, how reliable is your source? I went, well, I don't know. She's got a lot of health issues mentally, but she seems all right. But she told me something about he had a limb missing. And they said, yeah, we've never disclosed what limb. I said, well, if it's the left arm, can we carry on talking? If it's not, then we'll drop it. And this detective sergeant went, me, keep talking. And what happened at the time, there was a note was passed from the I think the IRA passed it through to the RUC. It said this is a ritualistic murder, right? It's a ritualistic murder. They tried to dismiss it. Now there's a guy called Colin Wallace. There's a documentary called The Man Who Knew Too Much, right? Colin Wallace was a senior officer in the Army Intelligence Corps, and he was on the disinformation unit in Northern Ireland.
Right.
He was given the brief to dismiss any information relating to Brian McDermott's murder that was ritualistic. So he went out and set up fake ritualistic sites all over Belfast. That was stupid little symbols that he got off heavy metal. He got books out the library to read up on it, just so it would be blamed on heavy metal fans, silly kids, to take it away from the fact that this kid was ritually murdered. Now, maybe he was ritually murdered by those in position of privilege and power.
Right.
But Colin started speaking out, and he was imprisoned for 10 years for a murder he never committed. So this is the lengths they will go to silence you, to stop the truth of it ever getting out. Because the essence of our conversation is, are those at the top worshipping witchcraft? Well, St. Paul, in his letter to the Ephesians, said that that's the case. We wrestle not against flesh and blood, but wickedness in high office.
In high office, right. I came across it. I mean, it was rife. I don't know how much of it, and they are completely blasé to it being evil. They're in complete control of it and do whatever they want. They're above the law, and it's in Britain. You know, it's just like
watch an interview by Christopher Lee, the actor.
Yeah,
fantastic interview he gives. You know, and this is a guy with a strong pedigree behind him.
Yeah.
And he says, it is real. Do not mess with it. You will lose your soul. You will lose your mind. Do not go near it.
Do you think this is what the phenomena is? And we've been psyoped to believe it's aliens when really it's something spiritual, demonic. And that's why they've taken the Book of Enoch out of this stuff. Do you think it's more to do with that?
I don't know. I don't think that aliens are benevolent. I don't think they're here for their betterment of society or anything like that. I've never come across anyone disclose to me about aliens, but manifestations of demons, yes, I have many times.
I think that's very connected. That's a very good point, John. I think that everybody I've spoken to and the things that they've seen and how they've seen it, I think the closest to the truth, and we don't really know what it is that these UFOs, cryptid creatures, phenomenon that people see are caused by manipulating people's consciousness and reality. And so a devil, I think there's not that much different between angels, devils, demons, and Bigfoot.
Just the terminology of it.
They're all somehow horribly connected. I don't think it's necessarily demonic. I also don't actually think that they're coming from a distant planet to do this. I think it's a force here on Earth that is desperate to affect us. I think we are very. A police officer would know that human perception is absolutely terrible.
Have you heard of the two children that appeared in a village in Sussex called they said they were from St. Martin's Land?
Oh,
and they were green.
They were green.
Yeah,
yes, I know that. Yes, I know. Yeah, the green.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, as well.
Yeah, and it's really funny because any reference to St. Martin's is always greenery. So you've got the church in London,
right?
One in Trafalgar Square. It's called St. Martin's in the Fields.
In the Fields, right.
And you've got Saint Martin, the Caribbean islands known as the Green Island. Anything to do with St. Martin's, all to do with greenery. But this is only interesting I said that about the kids because it was officially documented about these children.
Yeah, they were green and they lost their color as they got absorbed back into society. But I just think there's hidden secrets in the world. I mean, the more I dig into things and I get that you kind of slightly get into people's lives and they're starting telling you things that mere mortals just don't know. This, I mean, what John has uncovered in ritualistic abuse in the London area is insane.
Well, the bizarre thing is,
I want to bring you to two people in a minute. You might not be aware of them, but after you stop speaking, I'll tell you these two people to go and look at, because you might be able to do a bit of research and help us out with what's potentially going on with these children, with what these two people have said. So carry on with what you're saying, and I'll.
The epicenter of a lot of ritualistic abuse is a place called Epping Forest.
Right.
And it's a very, very weird place, and I've sat up on a couple of occasions when we've looked at stuff. We've gone up to there's a church called the Holy Innocents.
I think that's where Ted Heath was seen by. I think that's the forest that David Icke said.
It's awful. It's awful. And there's a church called the Holy Innocents, and we actually watched a ritual in there on Halloween one night, and I went into the churchyard and I collapsed. I was violently sick. It was an awful place, right? But because there's so many rituals alleged to go on there, but in the just a mile away from there is a place called Lippett's Hill, which is where the police helicopters are based.
Oh, that's right.
And the pilots are told that they're not to use their radar, their equipment 1 mile in or around the forest.
Why?
I know.
Right.
I mean, so
Well,
they
you
have
see-
to switch it off a mile before because they'll pick up massive heat sources, wouldn't they? You know.
Oh God, that sounds very Rendlesham and Suffolk. Just
Oh,
off
I've got
the
the I've got the location here. You might know it, John. Burnham Beeches in Buckinghamshire.
Yeah, Burnham Beaches.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's where
Yeah,
Ted Heath was
that's
seen turn into
Slough.
reptilian.
That's near Slough, Burnham Beaches.
Yeah.
That gets mentioned a lot, Burnham Beaches, yeah.
That's right.
So what I wanted
gentlemen,
to-
I have to go.
Okay.
But very interesting. We live in a very wacky country. John, you've done excellent work. I mean, how? Yeah, go and pray. I mean, after a day's work of doing this, it must be devastating for you and the families and the victims. So, everybody realize that we live in. It's not Epstein. You know, there's a lot going on all over the world. I live in France.
My
there's lots of things.
My take-home thing from this is it is real. It is real.
And it's real.
You know?
Yeah. All right.
Simon,
Stay safe, Simon.
I'm going to
Yeah,
send you
no, I
Make
know.
sure you stay safe.
Sometimes I feel worried by it, and I've kept a lot of. I'm not a police officer. I don't have any protection, and I've actually kept quite a lot of names out of it. I'm talking, by the way, to David Icke coming up very soon, specifically about our joint time at BBC Lime Grove when he was a sports presenter and on breakfast television, and I was working for Panorama. And we're going to talk about the people that we worked with. I think we're going to be quite open. So everybody.
Well, I sat down 9 years ago when I first whistle blew with a head of current affairs. He's the same head of current affairs now. I'm not going to name him. And I watched him the other week when the grooming gang scandal come on, and he went, well, we've never heard anything like this ever before, especially in London. And I thought, I sat down with you for a half a day, and he told me, this isn't newsworthy, go away.
Go away. Yeah.
You know, so they're just liars, man. They're liars. So.
And why are they doing it? I mean, it doesn't make any sense to me. The people I worked with were very honorable people, but some of them had very strange connections. So, yeah, good discussion. Everybody stay safe, and we'll keep in touch.
Thank you for joining us, Simon. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no, pleasure.
We'll send you the collaborator link, Simon, and we can connect it to your YouTube as well.
Yeah, thank you. All right. Good night, gentlemen.
Take care, bud. John, if you don't mind staying on with us for a while, is that all right?
Of course, gentlemen, of course.
So I wanted to bring you to the UFO side of it a little bit now. So there's two people I want you to look at. I don't know if you know, have you heard of Michael Herrera or Jake Barber?
No, Herrera, is that the Spanish spelling?
No, is HERRERA.
Yeah, Herrera.
So we'll start with Jake Barber actually. Jake Barber was on. He was a military guy, and his job was to shut people up basically. And well, was it the red team or something, or cut red? And on Jesse Michaels, he said something which made my ears perk up because I've researched the child side of the topic, and he said we take children from Indonesia and we put them in fight or flight mode. Basically, they terrify these fucking children, and it's to harbour these psionic abilities to be able to whatever, maybe fly these crafts or work these crafts or whatever. But there was no follow-on question from Jesse Michaels like, well, where are the children now then? Because we're hearing that a lot of these children that are tested are killed, they die in these experiments, or if they're not good for that, they're sold for organ harvesting or they're used for the sexual side of it. And it goes on, these children aren't found again. Or they maybe go into and they're working for them, stuff like that. That's what's going on. And then we got Michael Herrera, who is his military team, came across this Black Ops military group, no badges, no nothing, threatened them, said, you know, you can go missing here, basically fuck off, drop your weapons. And what they observed was these black vehicles going onto this craft, which was a UFO, and went up and silently over, I think it was the east coast of the United States, went off the east coast, and then they thought it were guns, they thought it was drugs. They later found out it was children and stuff like that. They were trafficking using reverse engineered technology, trafficking these children to wherever they were taking them, which in the UFO world, it's underground bases and they're doing all sorts of torture shit to them. But when I used to research this years ago, it was the adrenochrome, and I never bought into that. I never bought into the adrenochrome because they terrify me. It secretes in the blood, and they drink it, ritual shit, and all that kind of stuff. And then now we're hearing it for the psionic stuff, which again, it's like, and then we're hearing summoning CE5s. I would never tie summoning with UFOs.
Well, let's look at what we've had. So they did a study on psychic ability, and they found that children that had been abused and subject to childhood trauma had a heightened sense of awareness, which could be construed as being psychic. So you do get that great percentage of them that and I smell a pedo a mile off. I just know someone is. A voice will tell me. The guy I worked with for years on the child abuse stuff. He had an altar would tell him about people, and he used to tell me if someone was wrong, and it was a voice that would tell him. He said he's never ever wrong. He had this, this voice in his head that used to do it. I never questioned it, and it always seemed quite accurate. And the other thing about talking about trafficking children, well, it's always happened because there was a guy who was seen as an anthropologist and everything else, as one of the good guys, but he auctioned 40,000 children from the ages of 5 to 14 into domestic servitude and sexual slavery, and that man was called Dr. Bernardo. So and the government sanctioned him. So
that's the charity. Bernardo.
The guy that the charity is named after, that's why they've changed it to Bernardo, not Dr. Bernardo, because it came out that Dr. Bernardo was one of many people that were trafficking children.
So, but what I'm trying to get out with you, if this is if technology that is not public to the world is used to traffic these, how deep does this go? How serious is this? And how dark is this?
Well, the children have always been the key to it, and the organ harvesting is a reality. I was told by a consultant surgeon about the fact that people are worth a lot of money. That's why when they go, they put them in induced comas, and that's it. They put them in induced comas, and then they say, oh no, they died. But someone's got to be kept alive in order to take their organs, and an induced coma is a way of doing it.
Matty, this comes back around to, a few weeks ago when we were talking about MD Selig and what he was talking about, how much human beings are worth on the market.
Well, when was it in the UK where you was automatically enrolled in organ donations?
Not long ago. Yeah.
And we had to opt out of it. Right? I've actually opted out of it because otherwise, if some rich bastard wanted my heart, and I was in there.
One of the biggest things is your eyes. Your eyes are worth a lot of money. They're worth a huge amount because they're so easily utilised. People go into intensive care and they don't come out of it; they die there. But they're taken while it's alive. So there is a reality in that. So,
at the moment, they're looking at consciousness, John, and this is
2 seconds.
I've been looking at a lot recently. I've been looking at a lot. I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll wait for Matty because he can edit this bit out. I don't want to cover anything major. He always does this. He likes to drink, you see, when he does a podcast, John. We're very relaxed in the environment.
Yeah, I always have a cup of tea and sit down. I love to have my cup of tea when I do mine, and it's
I do with a cup of tea, John, but he's more of he likes a whiskey. Does Matt?
No, good effort, good effort. But that's how the conversation gets flowing, isn't it? But will the reality ever come out? Well, it will take someone who put their life on the line to do it. I think you'll get killed if it ever come out really what they've done.
Well, I mean,
you've got the Montauk project, that stuff that went on there. I've dealt with mainly survivors of ritual abuse. They tend to go on about the super soldier stuff, so that tends to sort of link in. And
we talked to a girl called Angela Maggard or Haggard, I think her name is. I'm sorry, Angela, if I've got your name wrong. I don't want to butcher it. I'm just an ignorant Brit. We talked to her on YouTube, and she comes on TikTok quite a lot. And she's a girl from the USA, and she's got credentials and paperwork to back this up, by the way. She was recruited into one of these projects in I think it was the early 90s, was it? Was it late 80s, early 90s when she was very young?
90s.
and she's got, you know, these psionic abilities, what you want to call remote viewing or astral projection. You know, there's many different names for these abilities, but it's been widely documented that not just the US government, but, you know, global governments have taken an interest in these kids and with these certain abilities for a number of reasons. And it tied us in. I mean, we obviously came at this from the UFO point of view. We're looking at the money. We're looking at this money, you know, the black budgets, off the books money, and what it's been put into. And what Matty tied it into with the UFO subject there was obviously these oligarchs that have got a monopoly on energy and transportation and propulsion. The guys in charge of, say, the Raytheons, your Lockheeds, and you know, the Boeings and your Northrop Grummans and your big aviation companies and aerospace companies like that. Those oligarchs that own those companies, they're heavily tied into these people who operate within the front bench of our government, say the Fabian Society, and these backhanded.
But you look at what they name. Look at what they name their things, like Apollo. Well, that comes from Apollyon.
Yeah.
You know, the keeper of the pit of hell, and Artemis. Again, they're all ancient negative deities that they name these things after.
Symbolism. The symbolism is a big thing in this, isn't it? Symbolism.
Yeah.
It's not a coincidence. None of this is a coincidence. And the reason why me and Matty are making such a big point of talking about this stuff recently, I think, is because the armchair podcast listener, you know, the average person who sat there at home, they're listening to Jesse Michaels, they're listening to the big name podcasts on the other side of the pond. And it's so far away that they're not really tying it into their day-to-day lives.
They won't cover it because they can't monetize it.
There's a brilliant testimony. I won't name him unless he gives my permission, but I can put you in touch with him. And he was one of the biggest gangsters to come out of Scotland. A man of absolute pure violence. He was ex-Royal Marine, but very good martial artist, but a dangerous man. And he got offered to run the sex trade empire in and around Edinburgh. And the woman who was running it was a witch. And she said to him, I can pass all of this over to you. But he had to give her his firstborn child. And she wanted him to get a woman pregnant and then pass the child on. Now, I got given a statement, and it was an evidential statement, and it was meant for the police, and it had been formulated by a solicitor, and it got posted to me, and I had to track down the author of it, and I found out by chance who one of the witnesses to this statement being made was, and it was a woman who ran a charity for street prostitutes. And I went to see her, and I put this statement down. I said, do you remember this statement? She went, yeah, I know that woman. She said, how did you get hold of this? I said, I don't know. It got posted to me. And she said, it's a true statement. It went to the police, John. And it was to do with the street prostitution scene in the 1990s in London. And it was based around the Waterloo area. And crackhead, drug addict prostitutes were being paid £2,000 not to wear condoms and to get pregnant by their punters. When they got pregnant, they were taken to a clinic, which is in West Brompton, in sort of Kensington area of London, and they give birth to this child, and they're given drugs and everything else. They're kept comfortable while they're in there, and then they leave without their child. And the woman was saying she's done it a couple of times, and quite a few women, they're regulars there. But they know that the children, the babies, are going for satanic ritual sacrifice.
Oh my God!
And that's what feeds. You know, that's why there's a never-ending flow of children. These aren't kids. If a kid goes missing, and the kid is named, there's a paranoia, and there has to be a national hunt for the person because our society doesn't like that. So we have to catch someone, and they have to be found guilty of it, because otherwise society never rests. That's why the kids going missing, never seen again, doesn't, on the whole, really happen in this country. But unregistered people, such as babies, they're outside of that remit. So they're a lot easier. And same as street prostitutes and homeless people, no one cares if they go missing. No one gives a toss. So they're the targets of the ritual sacrifice. The drug addicts, the homeless, and the babies.
I just want to reiterate again at this point, and I'm going to keep doing it, and I'm going to keep explaining why. I keep bringing it back to the Epstein files because that seems like it's a million miles away being across, again, the Atlantic, and everybody's looking about it and everybody's talking about it in the UK. But everything that you're mentioning now, John, this is on UK shores, and this stuff is mentioned in the Epstein files. The elite people, they call them breeders, where they take in these impoverished women from, poor backgrounds. They've got a lot nothing to lose, but a hell of a lot to gain. £2,000. That's a lot of money to people from these backdoor countries where a lot of these people were trafficked in from, and it's documented as such. So you're seeing these elite class people preying on poor people, poor women who are already addicted to drugs, are vulnerable, and they're using them for these nefarious purposes of breeding them and having children. For what purposes, we don't know, but we will find out, and that's where the disclosure is heading.
But the children that is sacrificed, you see. Now, the reason they do it, there is no blood in hell. Hell is a desert. It's a dry desert, right? And one drop of water is the biggest currency in hell, right? The currency is in blood. The demons are these giants that are disembodied. They got disembodied after the flood, right? Because they were an abomination. And they're transient in the spiritual realm. They need to embody. And that's why you get demonic possession and stuff like that.
I was going to ask you a question, actually. Have you noticed any connection with your investigations to rhesus negative children? People at rhesus negative?
Yeah, well, a lot of the psychic stuff is with this rare blood group AB.
Yes,
that's
I think the same thing. I actually created a WhatsApp group, right, and it was just women, and that's not being weird. Yeah. I did a post on my TikTok. It went viral, and primarily women know their blood type. I don't know my blood type.
No,
I guarantee Lee probably does. Oh, he might do because he's been in the army. But because unless you have a serious accident, men generally don't. But if you give birth, then you're going to need to know your blood type. So you have to have the anti-B or whatever it is. So all these women were like, yeah, I'm rhesus negative. They were saying the hands were doing that, their eyes change colour, they have more static, they're psychic. So I was like, right, I need to document this. So I created a group, and I just added about 200-300 women in this WhatsApp group, and I left it after about a week because it got too much for me because of all the notifications.
But they can't
what we're seeing was all these women basically trying to outdo each other with superpowers.
Yeah, they can't get pregnant by someone who isn't. That's why they have to have artificial insemination.
And I think that's not mentioned enough because a lot of people get miscarriages and they don't know much about the rhesus negative.
No, it's because of that they can't swap that blood. And the Russians actually call it dragon's blood. If someone is that, they call it dragon's blood. And the remote viewing unit for MI6, I was told that they're either of that blood group, the rare blood group, either or twins. So that's but
John, you're a spiritual man, and they've proved and they've recently discovered that the blood group of Jesus via the Shroud of Turin was that blood group.
AB,
so there's an interesting connection for you, huh?
Yeah, with no male DNA. So they'll say.
So does that mean that Scott Walters was right then when he said I'm non-human? Yes.
Exactly that.
The actual script said, "I am non-human," and this was apparently from Jesus himself.
All right, yeah, because
John Scott Walter is a forensic geologist, mate. He's the Indiana Jones, the modern Indiana Jones. If you don't know him, he's a member. He's a 33rd degree Mason. He's a member of the Knights Order, the Templars. Is heavily involved. But they recently discovered the Yeshua scroll, and we had him on for the last episode, and they decoded it and they'd spoken about it, and essentially from the word of Jesus himself was that he was part alien, but his blood group was AB negative, and that was proven on the Shroud of Turin as well.
Yeah. Which they tried to debunk the Shroud of Turin, haven't they? But
they can't do it. They've proven it.
Yeah, I know they can't do it, but what I'm saying about the blood, you see, what these demons need, they need the blood. Now it comes in layers. So if with the animals, it's a lower level. Right, so the lower level sacrifice in that they will be appeased by animal offerings, but the most important is that of a child because it's the nearest thing to Christ. So it's the nearest thing to the blood of Jesus is that of an innocent child, and it's got huge value in the demonic realms. There is power in it, and that's why they do it. And there's money, huge amounts of money gets put on this for one of these rituals to take place, because the demons will reward their host for doing it. I mean, I've heard of a British world champion boxer who is now an absolute monumental committed Christian, because he sold himself for a ritual in order to win the title. And actually, I won't name him, but in one of his fights, they said he was superhuman. They couldn't believe how he even came
Household
back.
name, John.
Eh?
It's a household name.
Yeah. I've heard of a footballer, Premier League footballer, and the footballer, for his ritual, he went more to the West African stuff, and that's why they found that body in the Thames, of the little torso in the Thames, the body of what they call Adams, the headless corpse in the Thames, which bizarrely enough was my unit when I was on the River Police, fished him out. That was all done for a Premier League footballer of African origin. So it's real. It goes
John,
on.
Can I ask you? Just give me a ballpark number in your time now.
I think you're on about Nigel Benn. That's who I think you're on about, but you don't have to name any names.
I can't say either way.
Shut up, you. John, what I was going to say was, like, out of the entire time you've been working on this, looking into child abuse and whatnot, how many witnesses have you spoke to? What would you say, ballpark figure?
Maybe 500.
500. So in those 500, and I'm just trying to, I suppose, prod for this, but has any of those 500 ever referenced anything regarding reptilians? And I'm just trying to give any.
Yeah. When you get ritual abuse, and it's sad because I was involved in a terrible accident nearly a month ago. I should actually died. I went through the windscreen of a car, and I walked out without a scratch, which was a miracle in itself. But my phone was destroyed in there, and on that phone I had a series of phenomenal artwork, which I'm absolutely devastated about. But the artwork came from survivors. Now, survivors of ritual abuse, if they talk about it, they've got a thing called DID. They've got these different alters, these different personalities, and some of the personalities are loyal to the Satanist. So the moment they start talking, the personalities loyal to the Satanist will step in and shut them down. And it might even tell them to commit suicide, right? Or it might tell them to hate you, to make an allegation up against you or whatever. And that's the protection it has. So they've been programmed psychologically and spiritually not to talk. And you actually see them trying to get their tongue to work, and they can't. But the one thing they can't do, right, is they can't prevent the person from drawing. So artwork is a massive therapeutic tool, but it's subject to artistic license. But there have been, and there are, a couple of really, really good, accomplished artists who are survivors of satanic ritual abuse, who have put their artwork down, and it's almost like a photograph. It's fantastic. And they can get into the altered state of mind, and they can be that altered personality that was being abused, and they will draw and paint to an incredible standard. And there was an art therapy group was put in for survivors of ritual abuse, and they were told to draw what they saw at the time that the ritual or the abuse went on. And almost every single one of them drew the eyes of like a lizard, the slit eyes, near enough every single one. And the children all drew like the Manchester United Red Devil. Loads of them drew that, but they all drew the red eyes with the slit. Loads, all of them.
Interesting. That's interesting. Yeah. It's a shame that you haven't got that to share. And just to show.
No, awful.
It makes you think whether that was the plan, you to survive, but for that to get taken out.
Bizarrely enough, about a week after it, someone contacted me who was on the other side, as it were, now claims he's a Christian, and said that they'd done a ritual on many occasions for me to have an accident. I went, well, bizarrely enough, I did have one. I mean, I survived it. But they'll never stop the other side. This is what I'm saying. Since I've been doing this, I've nearly lost 2 of my children in horrible circumstances, right? And I've had dead animals left outside my house. I've had doorbins on my wall, reefs left, chicken talons, whole talons buried in my garden and things like that. So just weird, horrible things have happened to me. No one's ever admitted it, but people have said that they've cursed me. I was told once that if you stop doing it, we'll stop sacrificing children in your name, so that you do stop it. So basically trying to sort of bully me into, like, if I carry on, a child will die. I've had that mentioned to me twice. But I'm not negotiating with these people. But
have you not been able to document that, though? Like, document them threatening you with that?
Well, no, I haven't documented it, written it down as such, but I do recall it.
I'm sorry, I don't know how the communication came about. Was it an email, text, phone call? Was it? I don't know.
Yeah, phone calls. I've had it through messages, emails, but phone calls as well. But the stuff that's happened, it's such a shame because my phone had all these voodoo dolls that were there. They had blindings around the mouth and around the stomach, and these things were put in place. And I took hold of one of them. I shouldn't have done, and I became really violent. I had bindings around the waist, and I ended up with organ failure, liver failure, not soon afterwards. So what I say to people is, you can't mess with this. I've watched so many people go mad and lose everything. A guy helped me with some research, and I told him, you can't go looking into devil worship if you're not Christian, my friend. Don't. It's too dangerous. And he just believed in the universe and crystals and all that. Within a year, he'd lost everything, and he was suicidal. He lost it a lot. His missus left him, his job, and he was mentally ill, under a psychiatrist, and suicidal within 1 year. And I said to him, I told you, mate, you can't. It's veiled in a curse. The whole thing is cursed.
It does. I'll be honest with you. I'm not like I believe in a God. I don't tie myself to any religious book. But the more I look into this side of it, I get depressed.
You do.
Really depressed. I get down about it.
And what you do, you'll be looking into the darkness, and the darkness will stare back. It will consume you. You must have time away from it. And I'm telling you now, it ain't about religion, but the man Jesus Christ is real. Just that man Jesus Christ. You call out to that name. Yeah, you don't have to call to the Catholic Church or the Protestant Church. Call out for that name, Jesus Christ. Your protection under the blood you shed at the cross.
Well, John, one of the things, we've been sort of manoeuvring our way, and me and Matty negotiating our way towards this point, really, where we are now. And it's been a fun road, but it's been amazing talking to certain people. It was incredible talking to Scott Walter, for one, because it's shone such a light on the spirituality element of it. Because for me and Matty, we've just sort of come in at this from a nuts and bolts perspective, and everything's come after that. The consciousness of spirituality.
Just for me, 26 years I've been researching UFO topic. For 25 of them, I thought religion was bullshit. That's. I'm going to be honest with you. I totally dismissed it. Over the last 12 months, I'm like, hold on a minute. I read the Book of Enoch. Within reading the Book of Enoch, I could see correlation straight away, very quickly, with my UFO research, thinking this is the same fucking thing. And I was like, I need to start taking spirituality and stuff and God and Jesus, all that quite serious. So I have been taking it very serious and looking into that side of it. And I'm catching up very quickly with that.
Read the book of Paul, his letters to the churches of the Ephesians and the Corinthians, and he warns them all about it. They commissioned a guy. He was the top mathematician in the world. He said, look into the Bible and debunk it. And he came back with his findings. This is true. This is real. The more he looked into it, the more he realised, no, this isn't rubbish. This isn't nonsense. There's something in this.
I've never been religious, John, and I've never been religious. I was a Roman Catholic, but I've never practiced. And then all the way through the military, you get choked on it. You get made to go to church on a Sunday through basic training. You get hammered with the padre when you go into Afghanistan and all the rest of it. And it's just a part of the game. So that's fine. But I've never paid attention to it. I've never gobbed off about it because other people obviously practice it. So I don't want to disrespect them. But I've always been skeptical of it, and it's only recently, maybe the last few months, of really digging into the spirituality element of this, that I've learned the most, I think, about religions. And I see them all as these control structures of just fear, basically. You do as you're told, or you go to heaven, you go to hell. You do as you're told, you go to heaven. And the thing that I'm learning the most, and the thing that's really blown my mind, really, is that how Jesus was nothing to do with any of these.
He ain't.
He was
Listen,
the guy, the messenger of
we're,
God, essentially. What he was.
We're the church, because where two or more stand in my name, that is the church. There's no bells and smells with what we're doing here, you know. And religion is the enemy of Christ, and it's quite clear. I was brought up a Catholic, come from an Anglo-Italian family. You know, I always knew there was something, but I witnessed a miracle. More recently, I lived a miracle, and it was done in the name of Jesus Christ, not in the church, not in the Vatican, not in nothing. It was in that name of Jesus. And I would never, ever,
And have you not noticed, John, sorry, you'll know this, obviously, all these churches, a lot of paedophilia goes on in these churches. We had the Catholic Church, was it the Vatican scandal, 5-6 years ago? Where the Pope before the American one that's just gone in there now, I can't remember his name. Pope, is it Paul or something? He's the new Pope. The one before him, he had to stick up for these other priests and stuff like that was touching kids up.
Yeah, what you got to do is you got to look at the history of it, you know, and especially with the Irish scene, where if a kid was no good on the farm, he was no good on his arm in the farm, they put him into the church. So the idiot kid got put in the church, and it was usually the kid was homosexual. So you've got a load of gay men were put all together, repressed sexuality, everything else, you know, unfettered access to vulnerable people, and you know, and the devil knows it, and off he'll tempt them. You know, no one is free from temptation, absolutely no one. And the devil will always wants you to go back to who you was. They call him the great accuser, wants you to be the drunk, wants you to be the womanizer. It gives you comfort in it and tells you, no, that's the way forward and all that, but it isn't. The wages of sin is death. But the paedophilia is just corruption of any organization. You know, you will get that in Judaism, you will get that in Islam. It will be rampant all through it. And then when you've got people that have been abused, they fall away from Christ. But Jesus, he makes a clear message to anyone who causes the young ones to fall away from me. It is better you put a millstone around your neck and jump into the depths of the sea. Because when they abuse a child, they destroy that kid's soul. They rip their soul out and they make them scream, where was God? Where was God when I was being raped? How can there be a Jesus who loves children when I was the one being raped? I did nothing wrong. Where was my freedom of choice? Why do you value the freedom of choice of a paedophile over mine? I get that all the time. People really hammering that home to me. But it's evil that does this. Evil does this. And when you've got power, ultimate power, like the church gives its priests, and the church, the Catholic Church, would never allow us to have this free-flowing narrative. It will be dictatorial. It will tell you what you need to hear.
And how would this change society, though, if we was to find out overnight that some of these people that are in prison right now doing life sentences was because of demonic entities taking possession of that fucking soul and doing it? That would change things dramatically, because it's like, hold on a minute. This might not have been them. This might have been some sort of possession.
Yeah, and mental institutions, you know, and as a result of being abused as a child, the doorway being opened, and then getting caught up in a world of debauchery and drugs, and then opening it even more up to it. So many of it. It all has its inception in abuse of child, which then opens them up to the demonic to come in. And a Satanist got in touch with me once, and he said, we love what you talk about. And I was a bit confused. I went, really? He said, John, I was abused. I was one of those victims of abuse. And I want you to keep exposing evil, child abuse evil. But my comfort comes in Satan, because Satan is revenge. And I want revenge on my abusers. So I pray to Satan, to Lucifer, that there is retribution for those who abuse me. And he said, and I want to pray for your protection. I said, well, not in his name, you won't. I'll do it in my name. But I got it. But he was coming from a wounded child. He wanted justice. He was screaming justice. And the devil gave him justice. So he thought, right? And can you imagine how these people feel when they are abused by a priest and they're made to take communion from the same priest whose cock they sucked a minute ago in the back of the church, as a young boy from the care home.
Just the act of that alone, though, John, is a ritualistic practice, as you mentioned, taking the body of Christ and drinking the blood of Christ. You don't even have to look that deep to know that is a ritualistic situation.
It depends if you're coming at it from the Catholic Church, but if you're coming at it from the fact that Jesus, he shed his blood for us, and all that, then no, that's the protection, because
I'm coming from the Catholic Church point of view, and the reason I do that, mate, is because I've spoke to a lot of the Knights, the Templars, and the Catholic Church and the Templars don't get on for obvious reasons, because, well, they shut them down, didn't they?
Yeah, they were the opposite side of it. But then you've got to look at the wealth that's acquired throughout of it, the opulence. Mm-hmm. What did Jesus own? The clothes he wore, and they took lots to rip them off him on his dead body. He even borrowed the donkey to ride into town on, after he'd just raised Lazarus from the dead, and they praised him, and then a week later they killed him. He owned nothing.
They flipped all of the tables at the temple, didn't they? Because they were extorting the people.
Let me ask you something. Has any of you got a credit card on you or anything like that?
I've got one in my wallet, I think.
Have a quick look and see if there's a hologram on the back.
It's the dove.
It's a dove, yeah. And now, whenever you look at the temple scene, if you Google it, you'll see Jesus turning over the tables and doves flying everywhere, because they were worshipping the doves to Baal, the money changers, the Jewish bankers. They were worshipping the doves to Baal.
Sorry, and he say that one more time there, John. Who was it?
The Jewish bankers.
Right. That sounds familiar, doesn't it?
Yeah. And it does. And the reason it's relevant now, and the reason that Jesus is relevant now, was he whipped them with wet rope. He soaked rope in salted water to give maximum pain to them, because the usury would cause servitude and cause slavery. And he knew that was one of the roots. That and paedophilia were the main roots of all the problems. They're the two people he cursed, the paedophiles and the bankers. Even to this day, the bankers torment us by putting the hologram of the dove on the back of the card, just saying, no matter what your God did, we're still doing the same.
Can't find my fucking wallet.
No, it's on there.
But I heard what you said about that. Yeah, that does ring a bell.
They're still doing the same. So when people say, the whole Jesus thing was nonsense, well, why even put it on there? Look, it's on the back of that. It's on the back of that card. Look, there's a weak dove.
Yeah. That is on the back of what I've got. I know that for a fact.
Usury is banned in every religion except Judaism. It's banned. They know it causes slavery.
And the big message, and this is what I really want to bring home to the people who are sat there, the armchair listeners. When you think religion, you think people who are banging on your door, waving a Bible at you and forcing you to go to church. This is not what we're talking about here. We're talking about something else. And the message that he was carrying was essentially that everybody has a spark of God within them, essentially. And that's the only place you need to look. And that message seems to be reiterated again and again and again by more and more converging scientists who are looking into the spirit world, the consciousness element of it, the Jesus thing of it, like by what Scott said the other day.
Look at it this way. If I went out and murdered my wife, if I had one, I murdered my wife, right? I'd go to prison for murder, right? And that's that. But what if I bullied her and I bullied my children? I told them, you're useless, you're fat, you've got a big nose, you're stupid, you're thick. And I hit them and I whip them. And they're not allowed to talk to me. They're not allowed. I just was an absolute see you next Tuesday to them all their lives. And my children go out in the street and they look at their feet because they don't feel safe and confident to look at anyone in the eye. They underachieve. They wet their bed. They socially distance themselves. They marry beneath their station. They end up in abusive relationships. They overeat or they undereat. They self-medicate because they have no self-worth because I destroyed them. And ultimately, they die young because of cancer, because of whatever, caused by my treatment. I've not only murdered them, I've also tortured them their whole life. Is that illegal? No, it ain't. It's not right, but it's not illegal. Does Jesus Christ see my actions as legal? No, he don't. He sees them as abhorrent. In fact, more abhorrent than if I just murdered them. You know, and that is the key in it. The law and that no one's sin is any greater than anyone else's, right? I might do something out of spite and never know the ramifications of it because I'm a decent citizen. And someone who's been abused all their life, made to suck their dad off and then been beaten and buggered in a care home, might make terrible life decisions because they can't make right life decisions because they're emotionally broken and have an inability of reason. Does God hate them any less or any more than my sin? No, he don't. He don't. He knows the journey they went on. And he knows every decision they make has to be filtered through all that filth that's in their minds. I had a school teacher, a woman who was a head of a school, contact me, very supportive. But she turned around to me and she said, you know these people that you helped, John? She said, they're always drunk whenever I see them on protests and that. They're always drunk. Do they not understand that if they're depressed and they're not feeling au fait with themselves, that drinking alcohol is the worst thing because alcohol is a depressant? I went, okay, yeah, it is a depressant. And I said, how was your upbringing? She said, it was lovely. I said, how was your mum and dad? She said, they were really lovely people. And I went, even me mentioning your mum and dad, I bet you're smiling, aren't you? She went, oh, yeah, I am. And I said, you know, when you walk to school, if you think of your childhood, Sunday dinner around mum and dad's, family holidays, does it put a spring in your step? She went, yes, it does. I said, okay, do me a favour in order to understand these people that I help. When you leave the home tomorrow, think of the taste of your dad's unwashed cock in your mouth. She went absolutely mental. You can F off, you can this. About 3 weeks later, I get a call. Okay, yeah, I get it. I said, you know, stop being judgmental. Some of these people, that's the first and last memory they have when they wake, when they go to bed, because they can't understand why. Why did that happen? Why was it me? Why did that happen to me? The person who's meant to protect me the most did the most appalling, abhorrent thing. And you think that even if they did that act of incest, would they even be bothered to wash themselves? No, they wouldn't, because they've got no regard or care for the kid, you know, so they wouldn't even bother washing it, you know, and that kid has to go through their life with that. No wonder. So, and Jesus knows that. He knows that. He knows that that's what that person does. And then all of a sudden something takes that memory away, and it's called heroin. And you put that away for that little minute, you're away from it all. But unfortunately with heroin, it wants you to use it again and again, and all of a sudden your money's gone and you've got to steal and you've got to shoplift and you don't maintain yourself.
And then you end up getting paid £2,000 to give birth for some rich guy.
Yeah.
And then the system keeps feeding itself, right?
And that's it. That's it. And those put in the place to help you don't really help you. You get put in prison and they charge £76,000 a year, and then you end up back in there because no one's ever bothered to sit down and talk to you and ask what, why, how, who, never. You know, and that's where the system's wrong. We lack humanity and understanding.
It's really dark. It's took a really dark turn at the end here, and for the right reason. I think we need to cover this, and that's why we've got you on, because these podcasters won't cover it, because as soon as you title it with the title "We're going to do it," it won't be monetized. I don't care, because I get off my arse and I go to work 5-6 days a week.
I'm the same. I've never earned a penny. I had £23, I think, once from YouTube, and then Facebook demonetized me, and they said you're not allowed to say rape, paedophile, or Satanism. Well, what else am I going to talk about? I mean,
yeah,
what's the point?
No,
I refuse to censor myself and say graped or whatever PDF file. I refuse to do that.
It will get the view. You will get viewed. This will get viewed because we'll share it on all platforms. It'll be viewed, clipped, and all sorts. But I don't care. I don't want any money from this. I don't want any monetization from this. I want this to be put out there because there's a connection to the UFO stuff. There's a connection to it, and I have a personal interest in this, and that's the reason I want to expose. I will never go into why I want to expose this, but I have a personal interest in this, and I will fucking keep going until I expose it. Simple as that. And I will use my platforms the best I can on this.
You listen to the testimonies of the women who are accusing Russell Brand, and they say that as he got to, they refused him sex or whatever, he changed and his eyes went black. Well, of course he did. He was taken over because he had spent his life worshipping the demons of wealth, fame, sex, drug addiction. He was in that demonic world. And that man, if his journey to Christianity is a true one, and I hope for his sake it is, because he's mocking Christ if it isn't, and Jesus will not be mocked. But if it is, he's got a lot of demons to get rid of, that boy. A lot, you know. And where did it get him? Nowhere. Where did it got him? Nowhere. And it will get all of them nowhere. Every one of them's going to take their last breath. Every single one of them is going to shut their eyes for the last time.
John, I want to steer you just towards one final topic, and then I'm sort of happy. Matty, you can ask anything else, but I'm just going to just steer us towards one thing. Just while we're on the subject of spirituality, right? One thing that we've sort of come to understand now, and I think everybody listening to this podcast would hopefully agree at this stage, is that we've been fed a bunch of narratives, essentially for thousands of years, which are a pack of lies and is bullshit and is basically a tool to put us inside this control structure. I think we all agree on that. Now, one of the narratives that is heavily sort of in the swing, or there's a lot of law around it, there's a lot of people discussing it, is this narrative surrounding Armageddon and the end of days and all this bullshit, right? Now, everybody's very, very quick to weaponize this. You know, Trump has anointed himself as the soldier of God to do God's work. Everybody's jumping, in Pentagon-wise anyway, at least, on the angels and demons narrative surrounding UFO declassification. We're talking about mass chaos on the streets worldwide with regards to the Joe Publics turning on each other, the left versus right narrative. They've weaponized hate and division to basically a grand scale. And now we've got this war in the Middle East. And this ties into Chris Bledsoe, who's a spiritual guy, very heavily involved with God, who's made certain predictions about certain things happening. And maybe the return of a second coming of Christ, or a Christ consciousness return of. This Project Bluebeam narrative we're seeing, and I'm sure you've heard of the Bluebeam, has been thrown around before. And this spiritual war, this light and dark war that we're seeing unfold in the Middle East and, again, on the streets of the world, this hate and division, it's all fueling itself for this one big narrative. What do you make of it all, John? Do you think that we're on the verge in the next year and a half of maybe seeing some kind of crazy disclosure?
It's really weird, isn't it? Because you've got, look, Trump's no one's saviour, and anyone who thinks he is are deluded, right? Because he ain't the saviour of anyone, right? He saved himself, and that's that. This man's worshipped money all his life. If anything, I think he's the one mentioned in the Book of Revelation, Little Horn, who comes to bring peace and with charisma, and funny enough, who endures a fatal head wound and survives. Well, he got shot in the ear hole, didn't he? And so he's not the saviour, he's the opposite, I think. And again, he can corral people into believing that, especially the American Christians, or fundamentalist Christians, when they push them into this corner saying, look, this is now a fight against evil and we're doing God's work, and the Middle East, and they're manufacturing this. But Jesus made it quite clear, no one will know the time and the place of the coming of man, no one. So if they think they've got a monopoly on when the Third World War happens and that, they're very much mistaken. However, I do think we are in some form of end times because of the moral breakdown of society. What is decent and what isn't has just gone out the window now. It's a very, very blurred boundary, and we are seeing pervasive evil all over the place. But this seem to be forcing the hand of it. And I don't think that's right. The COVID thing was a huge eye-opener for me, because I knew it was a lie when they said it was for the old people. Think of the old and think of the young. Well, they never gave a toss for the children. They'd stopped apprenticeships. They stopped fuel allowance for the old people. So they didn't care. When we got fat kids all over the place, which are going to die young of diabetes. So they don't care for the young and the old. So I knew it was a lie. And then you saw every single global leader working together. Islamic republics working with Christian democratic states, and lefties and righties and blackies and whiteys and yellowies and brownies all working together for the same narrative. They've never done that. They can't even agree on the shape of a banana. So let alone so I think that there is this global government. I think that the devil is a liar, and whatever they tell us, we must take with a pinch of salt.
Well, we're seeing now a lot of these conspiracies coming true, aren't we? Chemtrail, we know that that's now proven. They're doing that. They've been doing that. They've been poisoning us in our water, essentially. They've been poisoning us with 5G. That's been proven by Mike Steele. We've had him on. We've interviewed him, Matty, talking about direct energy weapons that are in these surveillance cameras all dotted around.
I'm not proud of the Mike Steele one, to be honest with you. Mark Steele. I've actually made that private because it doesn't fit with the channel, and I got a lot of backlash from people saying about what he did because he shot someone in the face or something.
Yeah, he shot a girl, didn't he? But he's a nice bloke. Him and his brother.
He is a nice bloke, but I have to think of the victims and someone I was sort of dragged into that interview, and I wasn't really happy about it. So it's there, and maybe I'll publish it when it eventually.
Say what you like about Mark's character, right? But the evidence is there. You can't really.
Yeah, he's good at what he does, and he's an intelligent guy. And
the point I was making, John, is that we're being lied to by the powers that be in every single capacity. They're essentially trying to kill us, depopulate us, make us poorly, and make us pay for it. More importantly, all of the above. But
yeah, of course. I mean, they've been saying it for a year. Look, they've started many years ago. I mean, the First World War got rid of the empire, which got rid of most of our working age men. Then they had this bizarre flu that occurred, which took away the rest of the men. The Second World War come along and skint the country and left everyone in a traumatized for 3-generation state. And then what did they do? They built the council house, was built to stop an uprising because they thought there'll be a coup d'etat. So they built the council house to stop the Brits revolting because we kept getting taken to war and lost it. So, and then they've tried to subdue our society ever since. I think the British people are under probably more attack than any other nation on the country. They've integrated us beyond recognition now. We've lost a lot of our national identity, our sovereign identity. Our kids can't afford any more houses. And if you look at the shape of men now, they're totally different shape to what they was when I grew up. They're an odd shape now. And we've got a lot of men growing up without a dad. The men have been removed from the home.
None of this is by accident, though, is it?
None of it's by accident. It's been a long-term plan. They've been doing it, and then feeding us crap. Telling us we've got to eat margarine and not butter when margarine's just shite. Bread with 20 ingredients when you only need 3, and all that stuff. They've been doing it, and people believe it. They believe it all. I was talking to some Somalian lads the other day, and they were going about eating chicken, and I went, but that chicken you're eating comes from Vietnam and Thailand. It's outside of EU regulations, heavily adulterated with all sorts of hormones. I said, that chicken will make you grow tits and have an arse like a woman. Like, no, it won't. It's good for you. It's better than pork. I was like, yeah, but you don't get the argument. And they don't just get it. And cannabis and everything else, all of it is there to subdue people, to slow them down, make them not think. And then they've got us. So they've already done it. And then what they do is they bring in migrant workers from rural countries that still have a good diet. The Lithuanians, the Latvians, the Polish, the Romanians. And so they bring them over.
All right.
And what they do, they get polluted. Yeah, their kids, maybe not them, but their kids don't want to pick berries and feed the chickens and go back to their nan's vineyard in the summer. Their kids want to play Xbox and smoke joints. Yeah. Their daughters get caught up with the local boys and interbreed and intermix, and they don't want to have the lifestyle their parents want. They want the easy, lazy lifestyle. And that's what
I'm homesick for the past. I really am. Yeah, and I think a lot of people are like that, homesick for the past. I was born 86. I grew up in the 90s and early 2000s when I started to get mischievous. I don't recognize this country anymore.
No.
I wish I'm homesick for something that does not exist anymore in this country. And I'm only 40 years old, so I can only imagine what people are 50, 60, 70 years old
it's
thinking.
unbelievable. I mean, the prices of everything now, you can't save anything. How can our kids save anything? I'm the last generation that ever owned a house. And I work with young offenders, and they're all foreign, all of them. And I say to them, right, we're going to go out and we're going to find a white Englishman like me in London. And I put up a £5. Anyone can find me one, I'll give you a £5. And the other day they went, John, yeah, get this guy. So we pull up next to me. I said, where are you from, mate? Romania. And I went, they're gone. There's no white Englishmen left. They're gone. I don't know where they are now. I don't know. The Lake District, who knows? But it's just how it is. And it's not a race thing or nothing like that. It's how it is. It's gone. It's finished.
If you look at Agenda 30, Klaus Schwab, actually, it's there for everybody to read. People think this is all fucking conspiracy. It's written down in policy. You know, by 2030, they want people normal people like us, by the way, to have one short haul flight every 3 years, while these elites can jet off and do what they like whenever they fucking want, and we're not going to be able to. They want us to own nothing and fucking be happy about it, essentially. They've even said that. You know, they've said this.
Well, look at a car. You can't drive in London over 20 miles an hour. And as you're driving at 20 miles an hour, you get passed by a push bike doing 40 miles an hour.
Well, Oxford's already going to be the 15-minute city.
Yeah. Well, they don't want us having cars because they don't want us taking stuff. They want us on little push bikes, you know, doing nothing. And it's already happened. It's here. We've had it. But people, you're right. People have the alternative media movement that I sort of was part of it when it first came out many years ago, 20 odd years ago, something. You had Channel 200 on Sky. You had people like Richard D. Hall, Ian R. Crane. You had Mark Steele was part of that. David Icke. There was loads of them. And, you know, they were saying the right thing. What they were saying was right. And, you know, Ian R. Crane was going on about chemtrails and saying about what will happen. And he was also going on about the net zero thing and peak oil, where they just basically bully people and thinking the oil's run out. And they've been proven it's a natural lubricant. It will never run out. It's a lie. He was in the oil industry. He said it's just a lie. And they've all done it. And they all sell out and they all diet and they all have the party line. And, you know, I saw it in the police, you know.
Because a lot of the people can't prove it. Do you know what I mean? When it's said to us, you know, I don't know what oil we've got and how long it's going to last.
Yeah.
So the majority of the 90% of the population, let's be fooled into believing what we're told by these so-called fucking experts, and that's what we're being told and we believe. It's like the CO2 and the emissions, and it's going to kill the planet, the ozone layer. We've been told that since the 90s, well, before the 90s. Nothing's happened.
London was meant to be underwater 10 years ago. You know, when I grew up, it was, what was the thing? The acid rain, right? Acid rain, and they were showing pictures of the Scandinavian pine forests, all the bark off the trees, and all the fish dead. So we were told Sweden, Finland, Denmark, all the fish has died because of acid rain. They're all dead. And the acid is going to erode all the buildings, and Parliament was built out of sandstone. That will be eroded, right? It's happening, and it's going to happen. There's no fish left in Scandinavia. They're all dead. And then the Russians were going to blow us up with nuclear bombs. We were told that. We were showed queues of Russians queuing up a mile to just buy a loaf of bread, right? And the Baltic states, that they're starving. I went out in the 90s to Lithuania, and it was a bit of a shithole, to be honest. The countryside was beautiful, but the city's horrible.
Wait, sorry, whereabouts in London are you from? Are you from Essex?
I'm from Paddington, yeah, northwest London, yeah.
So was you in the police? Was you in the police when the Essex boys were killed?
Yeah. Yeah.
Any? Do you think you know who the killer was, or do you think any conspiracy?
No, I mean, I'd never really heard.
I thought I'd just ask while I've got you there.
No, I'd never heard of them, but subsequently, I've sort of heard things about different people that know them and people that, you know, they were warned, weren't they? The Blundell brothers warned them, you're going to get one in the head and all sorts of things. But they just become a phenomenon, you know. I think they weren't as big as they made out. They were
Do
sort
you
of
think did you think the movie, the definitely 1 and 2, it's just like exaggerated the story massively?
Oh, of course it is. Yeah, of course it is. Yeah,
Because it went from like football hooligans, Rise of the Foot Soldier, and then number 2, and it's like 3, 4, and 5. It's just insane what they're doing.
I've done a podcast with Terry Stone, and
he follows me on TikTok. I speak to Terry on TikTok.
Yeah,
he's a great guy, by the way. He's a great
really
guy.
Nice fella. He's a really nice guy, but the films are awful. I mean, but it's just
Pat Tate in it, isn't it? Just Pat Tate 1 to 10, isn't it? Isn't that
how he can pull off what's he called? The guy with the blonde hair.
Yeah.
That's who he pulls off, doesn't it? That Terry Stone, he pulls off the guy with the blonde hair.
Funny enough, I was in a pub, and this guy come up to me, and really big guy, and he went, "How comes you're real Cockney accent?" He said, "How comes you're not fucking dead, Wedger?" I said, "I don't know." I said, and I looked at him, thought, "Blimey, I know him," and he's one of them actors in them films, a bloke called Tony Denham. He plays in The Football Factory and all that. He's a very well known guy. Tony, big guy, big strong lad. He's up with that Craig Fairbrass and all that. And he said, "My name's Tony." I went, "No, yeah, I recognise you from these things." And he goes, "I follow your videos." I said, "Do you?" He went, "Yeah." He said, I said, "Oh, blimey." He said, "You follow some of mine?" I went, "Not really my genre, but I watch them. You know, I like to support British cinema and all that. But the Foot Soldier lot, I mean, once you've seen one, you've seen them all. You know, you think, oh, I mean, The Business was quite a good film. You know, I quite enjoyed that.
Do you know what I think it is? I think it was a really good. The first film was really good. Now, whether it's true, I don't know. The film, whether they stuck to the story. The second one was good, but I think after that, it was just like, you know what? We really get on. Should we carry on making a few more movies and making some money together? Because they look like a group of lads that really get on and like the sesh. And I think that's what they've done. And they've created 3, 4, and 5.
They just. I mean, the film The Business. I met the guy it was made about. It was made about. A fella called Michael Emmett, and Michael Emmett is meant to be like the Danny Dyer character. It's meant to be about him and Freddie Foreman. That's what the film's about their importing drugs from Spain. And when you and Michael become a committed Christian and that's how I got to know so many of these people. And I started doing quite a lot. I've been doing quite a lot with a guy called Stephen French from Liverpool.
Yeah, I've watched his documentary. He is an hard bastard.
The devil. And so we got him baptised a couple of months ago in London. He came to see me.
You got him baptised?
Got him baptised, yeah.
Wow.
And I got him back, and I've got the guy who got to do it was a man called Chris Lambriano, one of the Craigs firm, who's now an ordained minister. So I said, "Well, can Chris baptise you?" And he went, "Yeah."
My granddad was mates with Charlie Richardson, you know.
Well, funny enough, Charlie Richardson's wife, she's a big fan of mine. She does a lot of my videos, and she's a really...
Listen, don't you know everyone from London is related or no?
They all know each other. But Charlie Richardson's wife is a woman called Veronica, right? She's a really lovely woman. And she told me a story about him. She said his brother, she don't get on with his brother, Eddie. She don't like him, and that's that. But she said Charlie was highly intelligent. And he had an obsession with geology and ancient history. And he'd read books about ancient tribes in South Africa and how they dug these spiral mines, and they mined gold and all over South Africa, right? And they were productive, then they weren't, and then industrial mining took over. But he'd studied old maps and found out where these places were and realised it was just disused land. So he bought them and he got them back to productivity. And because they started producing huge amounts of gold, the British government tried to stake claim to them again. And he told them to F off. And when you can get stuff, they're mine. And they basically said to him, "Well, you've got one choice. You either give it to us or you suffer the consequences." And because he wouldn't sell them to him, the next thing he gets hit with the largest sentence ever for GBH. He served 20 years for GBH, and she claims that that's all down to the fact that he would not sell his gold mines to the British government.
So not surprising, huh?
You know, so it starts going into these little wells. It's really, and it's really interesting. But yeah, I do a lot with ex-criminals on that respect. Not that I'm into the crime side of it, but the fact is they've got a good story of redemption. Chris Lambriano has got an amazing story about how he went to God, and he was one of the most dangerous prisoners in the country, you know, at one time. So,
John, as a man from law enforcement, mate, I'm just going to ask you another question, if you don't mind, because I'm curious. As a military guy myself, right, I know how a hierarchy works. I know that there's a need to know at a certain level of the hierarchy. Yeah, somebody knows something, and then beneath that, they don't know that, basically. Yeah. Now, the question I have for you, you know, I'm not going to make, I can make a prediction. I can tell you what I think is coming, but whatever I think is coming is everybody's going to know by the end of 2027 what the fuck's going on a lot of different disclosures, I think. And, you know, I can sit here all night spinning stories about what I think is coming over the hill. But one of the things I want to know from yourself, and, you know, I can lend an opinion on it, is in the police, in the military, in the fire brigade, in the NHS, we've got this same hierarchical rank-based structure. And at a certain level up that rank structure, John, somebody's going to be looking at all of the stuff that we're talking about right now on an episode, or from friends or social circles or whatever, and thinking, and they're going to be thinking, fucking hell, this can't be true. And they're going to look at it. Now, I think maybe there's a day coming soon, John, where people in that hierarchy are going to have to make a decision on what their values are and what their morals and ethics are. Do you know what I mean? They're going to have to
but how it works with the police, it's all about the pension. And of course, when I joined, the majority of the people I work with, half of them would come out of the military, and it was based on a disciplined service, like the fire brigade. We had to march and salute and all that sort of bits and pieces. So you got that installed in you, that Queen and country, you will have obedience. And there was a huge amount of obedience, and the police, they fed you, they watered you, they housed you, and it was a way of life. And of course the trauma bonds you as well. And with the police, it was a them and us, and the more you got into it, the more you got away from normal society. All your friends were police. You got what they call job pissed, you know.
Military.
Exactly the same, yeah. Now, the higher up you go, of course, there will be a lot more disclosure comes your way. Now, I'm going to give you a couple of examples. So I had one of my senior officers, I went into the investigative branch, the detective branch, which I loved it. I loved it for the freedom, but it was interesting. And we would start dealing with some things that were sensitive, and they were like politically sensitive. And my old boss had been the senior investigating officer for the Lady Diana inquiry, the crash. And he said it was a rigged investigation from start to finish. And he said, if anyone thinks that that was an accident, they're a fucking idiot. You know, that's what he said to me, right? He said it weren't. They took her out, right? So that was a guy investigating. But of course, the findings in court were the opposite. It was an accident. And he turned around and said, no, it fucking wasn't an accident. Now, there was a guy called Lenny Harper. Lenny Harper was a senior investigating officer. He'd been in London. He was a Belfast. No, he's from Londonderry, I think. He was a Protestant, Ulsterman. Joined the Metropolitan Police, did incredibly well. Moved up as a senior officer to Strathclyde. Went into Glasgow, did incredibly well in Glasgow, and he was headhunted to look into an inquiry in the island of Jersey to kids' home called Haute de la Garenne, in which there were allegations that kids were killed in a ritualistic environment, and an industrial level sexual thing, and it was those high up in the Jersey society that were abusing, raping, torturing, and ritually killing these kids. And he went there with every ounce of integrity that man had, and he had a lot of integrity, you know. He'd come from the Belfast thing and held his head up high. He'd been in the Met Police, detective in murder teams, and then he'd gone to Strathclyde and he'd held his head up high there. And he thought that this little island is nothing to him. And it was the thing that ended up beating him, because he uncovered the abuse that went to the heart of the British establishment. And that was the ritual abuse of killing and sexual abuse of children.
With all that research, John, that bloke did and saw for himself, that's now getting laid bare for all the public to see. And these high rankers and these people across these hierarchies throughout the military, the police, the Navy, the Air Force, all of these people in authority, they're going to be looking at this now, and this is becoming almost public knowledge. Whereas that years ago, that was maybe just something that he was looking at and dealing with.
I
These
get that,
people are going to have to make a decision whether they're going to follow the orders of these people or not at some stage.
But what's in it for them? And also you've got to look at, you've got leaders and you've got followers. It takes a certain person to lead. Leaders are born, they're never made.
But that's why they're in that job, John. That's why they're supposed to be in that job. They're supposed to know the difference between right and wrong and act on it.
I agree.
I'm
going to intersect this. I think when you're in that job, sometimes you can come across stuff that you never imagined would have been going on, and I think they have to deal with it in that moment. And then, like, when you started in the police force, John, did you think you would know or go through what you've been through?
No.
This is what I'm trying to get at. So a lot of people are going to go through things that they would never have expected to have been possible, or they see the world through rose-tinted glasses a lot of times.
But let's put something else into the mix. There's a group called Seen and Heard. I never heard of them. I've never seen them before. And they contact me and said, you speak up. You speak up for us. We're really grateful. And one of them, a member of the group, is a bloke called Charles Spencer. And his sister was Diana Spencer. And these are a group of people that went to the elite schools. They went to Eton, Winchester, Radley, all them schools, right? These are the children of society's elites, upper ruling classes, right? They've got a survivor group because of the horrific sexual abuse they endured as kids. These are men that were whipped, beaten and buggered under the guise of elitism in our elite schooling. They have grown up to have horrific sort of anxiety issues, brokenness, trauma. The broken child is never gone away from them, right? They are suffering to the core. Now, they've come from, historically, from families that have endured the same, been through exactly the same as them, right? Their dads went through it, their grandparents went through it. And some of their parents are military leaders. Some of their parents and grandparents were heads and magnates of a big industry. Yet, deep down, they're broken children, right? But they benefited so well from going through that system, they'll never turn against it. In fact, they even lead their children into it. But what has it done to them? Well, it's made them very dysfunctional, broken adults with the inability to reason. And they go on to hold positions high in the military, go to Sandhurst, get in charge of regiments and things like that. And then when they looked at the ideology of these schools, they found out that these schools were built on the Greco-Roman gladiator schooling, right, where you whip, beat and bugger the kids into total acquiescence. So it breeds an acquiescence. It breeds a slave drone for society. So with these people still in charge, will we get revolution? No, we won't. We'll never get revolution because they are designed, and they are designed by genetics to acquiesce to society. And then they are rewarded by privilege and everything else for doing so. So will they wake up to it? No, they won't. They won't even believe what we say. They'll refuse to believe what they say because they're so broken. There's no need to. But there's some that do. The victim in them that cries out for justice will want change. And that's what we're seeing happening. But what we've got to understand, gentlemen, is our society is in stratas. It's in layers. As much as we are woken up and we start to understand it, there's others that won't. And I think that to assume that all of society is like us, it will be a massive, massive miscalculation of judgment, you know, because they're not.
You know what, John? I've actually loved listening to you tonight because as much as I look at it from the UFO topic, and I do have a personal interest, like I've said to you about it, through personal, private, family reasons and stuff that's going on. I want to expose it, and I want to come at it from different angles. And I've had a UFO channel, and if I can come at it from this angle, I will do, and I will try and expose this side of it. And it's the only side of the UFO topic that keeps me awake at night. That there's something going on with the children, whether it's experimentations, and there's potentially right now hundreds, thousands of children being held up somewhere, being experimented on, wanting to be saved and stuff like that. And that does keep me awake at night. And I just want to thank you, because I never thought 20 years after, 20 odd years, 25 years later, from researching this to thinking it's nuts and crazy and none of this is going on with the children, to speaking to an ex-police officer, and when Simon Holland was on before, a professor, like highly intelligent guy, that I would be having these conversations and that it would be a prominent topic. And it's been mentioned in Congress, and you've got Congress speaking about demonic beings now. I'm reading the Book of Enoch, even hybrid programs. This is stuff I've been looking into for 25 years and been bullied about and been told, listen, you're not, you're crazy. This isn't going on. Now I'm the one people are coming to saying, can you give us a bit more information? Can you direct me? Yes, I can direct you. I've been researching this for a long time. What I like about you is you've given me another angle to look at it from, but you look at it from the sexual side of it, which I hate looking at. I like to look at it from the experimental side of it, and that's where I'm coming at. So you're seeing it from your side, and I'm seeing it from my side, and it does come together. What concerns me with the UFO side of it, which you probably don't see, is that they're using the reverse engineer technology, which isn't public knowledge, that they deny having any of this, to do the trafficking of these children, which means there must be a really serious dark side to this that they are not going to disclose to the public, and that is why they're killing people.
Well, there's nothing new under the sun, it says in the Bible. This technology we're seeing, AI, that's the Book of Enoch, Book of Isaiah, sorry. I will be like the Most High. That's ancient technology that's just resurfaced, that the demons know about. It's never gone away. All these things we've had before, and it's just been wiped out by floods, by catastrophe, whatever. But those on the know, it never went away. They kept that secret. They know about it. It's etched into tablets. It's hidden away in materials that will not perish because of water, because of everything else. And so I think it's always been there. We're not evolving at all. We're de-evolving. This stuff has always been there. They know it. AI has always been there.
AI is a nightmare. I've had to tell my daughter off many times because she's cheating on her homework by asking ChatGPT for the answers. And I said, you can use ChatGPT to help you. I said, not to give you the fucking answers. So it's impossible now to fail a GCSE because you've got so much technology. You've got so many YouTube videos that can just dumbify it for you, simplify it for you.
Well, not only that, on an intellectual level, and then on a physical level, we haven't got to go to the shops anymore. We just call up and they deliver what we want.
That's true. That's true. Everything is on our fingertips.
Have you seen the film WALL-E, the Disney film?
I've seen it, with the kid. I've watched it. Because
basically, it's like a snapshot of the future, and all the humans have evolved to be too fat, and they're all carried everywhere on mobility scooters, essentially, and food's brought to them, and they're looked after by a centralized computer system. But,
sounds wonderful.
Exactly.
Wonderful.
Right? But they hide all this shit in plain sight. This is part of the sick, twisted joy of their cabal. This is what they seem to do. They like to tell us what they're doing to us in plain sight. They seem to get off on it, or it seems to be part of their dark religion. But they hide this shit in movies, what they're doing, and they hide it in fucking cartoons.
But not only that, when they take away that, like the future, they take away people's projection for the future, so they don't invest in it. So you're getting my generation. By the time they were in their 20s, they were married. They all got married, and kids were on the way. And you probably had a mortgage by your early 20s, right? That stopped. That will never ever come back. People don't want children now. They get in the way. Gays don't want children. Lesbians don't want children. I know they sort of have it, but on the whole, they don't. They're getting away. They're getting away with other couples. They want to go on these city breaks all the time. They don't want to. And what will happen is children will be a thing of the past. Now, how long will that go on for? It can only go on for 30 years, and then you've got a problem. We can't keep relying on the Nepalese, the Bangladeshis, the Romanians, and all the other migrants to keep feeding us with kids. You know, because our kids aren't going to be there. Who's going to do the maintenance work?
Well, the reason for
Where
this
are the apprenticeships? It's not replenishing itself. You're taking money out of the bank and not putting it back.
I've done my job. I've got 5 kids.
Yeah, good on you. I've got 4, but
I've only got the 2.
But we're a rarity, you know. And then you've got these comedy shows like The Big Bang Theory, where they see kids as being horrible, as being evil.
Psyop,
you know what I mean?
Just getting psyop to shit.
It's psyop, but yeah, and it's promoting this weird ADHD-ness in it that's normal when it's not normal at all, and it isn't.
No. One thing I want to do,
yeah.
and people probably are sat at home now, and they listen to this stuff on the TV, and they think, "Oh, AI, it's going to be a conspiracy. This Skynet shit, blah blah blah. It's going to take over." I want to tell you, right, and I'll just set you off on the right path. If you want to have a look at it, and you think, "Oh, this isn't real," go and have a look at this. Peter Thiel, who is Palantir, they're in charge of this surveillance, this AI surveillance all over the fucking world, this global company called Palantir. And they're heavily involved with the Fabian Society. And the Fabian Society are the entire front bench of the Labour Party. So if you don't believe that this future is coming for us, or that's their plan for us in the future, go and look at China, because that is what they want for us. They want that same system on a global scale. And that's what they're doing. So if you think it's bullshit and it's a conspiracy, just go and look at Palantir, Peter Thiel, his connection with the devil, as John's already mentioned, the dark arts and what these people are involved in. Go and look at it yourself.
But when you look at like TikTok, you've got these influencers, these sort of, I don't know what they call them, Gen whatever lot, English guys going out to China, and they're obsessed with getting Chinese wives, and and they do these things, don't they? My day in the life of an Englishman in China, and this idiot's going out there and he's going to the shop, don't have to pay, it's all on a biometric, right? Gets in his motorbike, it's on a thumbprint. Gets in his flat, oh, there's no theft here because it's all on a biometric. Everything's done on a biometric, absolutely everything, right? And he's sitting there like it's a really good thing, with his little half Chinese kid and his Chinese missus. Like, that's the way forward. But it looks like total out of slavery. And you're thinking, you know, they are just all clones of each other. There'll be no individuality or nothing. And I'm thinking, this is a way forward. And I don't want to be part of that.
But look how many people are sleeping rough in China now because they can't afford to live in their own fucking houses anymore. And the government has the ability to just shut their entire life off. So they've got no choice but to sleep rough. These are people who are working 9-to-5 jobs. They just can't get sleep in their you know, they've got nowhere to sleep. It's crazy. And
what about if you're someone like me? You're in law enforcement in China and you know that a politician is shagging a little homeless boy. You know, you say anything, that's it. You'll be put in prison.
Yeah,
I want to.
Yeah, worse. Yeah.
I want to shut it down in a minute because I need to go, but I do want to share something off camera with you, especially
let's tie
John.
a bow in it then, John. Let's say goodbye.
Where can people see your work, John? By the way, where do you want to?
Oh, it's all over the place. I mean, I've sort of given up doing my own thing now. I guessed more than anything else, so I'm sort of I just can't be bothered. And since I come out of that car crash, I don't really go on Facebook much, but I'm out there all over YouTube. JON Wedger WEDGER. You know, I'm everywhere really on that front. And I just really, I guess, I do quite a bit of mainstream media now. They've eventually, after 20 years, picked up that I might have some credence to what I say. So,
and have you wrote any books or any documentaries?
Yeah, I've got. There's 2 books out. There's one written by a lovely guy called John Cooper. It's a biography called The Great Reveal. It's about witchcraft, Satanism, and it's linked to society. So that was actually a bestseller. And I've got one I'm writing myself called Ironic, about my life really in the police and the irony, in as much as, you know, I spoke out in the police for the truth, got punished and brutalized by the police. And the ones that came to my rescue were survivors of abuse and those from the criminal classes came and helped me, and were my salvation. And that's the irony of it. You know, my friends are all now ex-criminals. Very, very rare I have anything to do with anyone from the police. There's a couple of really good guys, but yeah, the moral fibre I found came from the criminal classes. So
you're a hell of a guy, and I don't mean to take the blaspheme, but you're an amazing guy, John. You've done an amazing work, and the fact that you're still here now, banging the drum all these years later, speaking to us, helping us tie a lot of what we've been researching into, what's current and what's going on right now. So thank you for me on a personal level, John.
It's an absolute pleasure. I'm really grateful for the opportunity. And if I may, in summary, just call out to any survivor of abuse that may be watching this, please keep going strong. You will eventually get the justice that you need, and it weren't your shame to carry. You've done nothing wrong. Be proud and be strong, and your life has got value and it's worth something. And for those that feel like it's not worth it, that's a lie. That's a lie from the devil himself. Your life is precious and you are loved. And strangely enough, ironically, I want to call out to the paedophiles and say, stop it now. You know the pain, you know the empathy, you know that what was done to you was wrong. Don't do it. Give yourself up. Go to the police, tell them what you've done, and stop doing it. Stop doing it now. And a call out to the Satanists: you're worshipping a liar. He's a man of deception. If you want to know the truth, go to Jesus. And that's it, really.
John Wedger, powerful message to end the show on. Thank you for coming on. Guys, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for having a watch. I've been UAPLee. This has been Across the Pond. And Matty from UFOs Around the World, thank you for joining us. The links are going to be in the bio to John, and also the link to the collab to Simon's channel and to Matty's as well.
And to John as well.
And to John as well. Thank you. Yeah, we'll get all the links in the bio. But until next time, take care and see you later.
Good night.
God bless.